Chapter 294. It wasn't just the man's eyes that were filled with disbelief, even the nearby old man had an expression of shock. Obviously, he hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually kill him. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "You actually dared to kill him?" Yi Xian smiled. "He thought I didn't dare. I just wanted to prove that I dare." The old man's expression was rather savage. "This is the ancient Wu clan, not your firmament sword sect." Yi Xian smiled. "I've already given him 2 chances. Unfortunately, he didn't cherish it. Since it's like that, then let him die. As for you, if you're dissatisfied, then attack." As he spoke, a formidable aura suddenly swept out from his body. The Sword Emperor's aura. The old man's expression instantly changed when he saw this Sword Emperor's aura. He gazed at Yi Xian with slight disbelief. You're actually the Sword Emperor." Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "Notify him that Yi Xian represents the Firmament Sword sect to request an audience with the ancient Wu clan's patriarch." The old man's expression was rather unsightly. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression suddenly turned cold. "What are you waiting for?" The old man glanced deeply at Yi Xian before he turned around and left. On the spot, Yi Xian faced the man on the ground who was still breathing, and the man was staring resentfully at him. Yi Xian smiled. "Do you think the ancient Wu clan will take revenge for you?" "No, they won't. Because they don't dare." How arrogant. Needless to say, Yi Xian really was arrogant enough. But this time he'd intentionally acted so arrogantly. Of course, the reason he'd killed the man was because the man had aroused killing intent towards him when he'd accidentally entered this place for the first time. Just as he'd said, the man had noticed him the first time he'd come here, but the man hadn't stopped those venomous snakes. Obviously, the man wanted to use him to feed those venomous snakes. Unfortunately, the man had misjudged Qin Shi's strength. For the sake of the Gu Wu clan, he gave the man 2 chances. However, the man thought that he was afraid. Some people were like this. If you took a step back, they wouldn't think that you were being magnanimous. Instead, they would think that you were afraid of them. Then they would become even more insatiable. No matter how many of such people there were, Yi Xian would kill them all. "I'm giving you convenience, but you can't treat it as anything." Very soon, the old man from before walked over again. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, "The patriarch wants to see you." Yi Xian nodded. "Please lead the way." The old man glanced at the man's corpse on the ground. The man's aura was getting weaker and weaker. He slowly raised his hand towards the old man as if he wanted to say something. The old man sighed in a low voice. "You should maintain due respect for the strong." After that, he led Yi Xian into the depths of the dense forest in the distance. On the spot, the man's eyes were wide open. He had really died with a grievance. Under the old man's lead, Yi Xian entered a small village. Unlike ordinary villages, the houses here were built on ancient trees with a long history. On both sides of the village there were some stalls. Besides miscellaneous goods, there were also some rare treasures. Yi Xian even saw a heaven-grade treasure. It was a little strange. The old man led Yi Xian to a treehouse. This treehouse was very big, much bigger than the other treehouses. Moreover, on the roof of the treehouse, there was a pair of huge horns and some mysterious runes. In front of the treehouse, the old man bowed deeply to the treehouse. "Patriarch, he's here." A voice sounded from inside the treehouse. "Come in. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page." Outside the treehouse, the old man looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked in. The interior of the treehouse was very simple. There were only a few tree chairs and a wooden table. And in front of him stood a woman. From her appearance, she looked very young. She wore a skirt made of leaves that only reached her knees. Below her knees was a pair of jade-white thighs, and in her hand was a wooden staff. And the woman's aura was deep like the sea. An expert. This was Yi Xian's first impression. The woman sized up Yi Xian. In the next moment, a powerful pressure suddenly pressed down on Yi Xian. In an instant, Yi Xian's body felt like it was being pressed down by a mountain. Bang! A powerful imperial sword aura suddenly swept out from his body. This imperial sword aura forcefully blocked the woman's pressure. But in next to no time, the woman took a step forward. As her step descended, the pressure she emitted instantly multiplied. Kacha! In an instant, the bones in Yi Xian's body started to make cracking sounds. And Yi Xian's legs actually started to slowly bend as if he was about to kneel down. The imperial sword aura could not block it. Yi Xian's expression was quite ferocious. In the next moment, he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. Bang! A powerful force suddenly emanated from his body, and this force, coupled with his Sword Emperor's aura, actually forcefully blocked the pressure that the woman had released. Earth force. Facing such an expert, Yi Xian did not dare to hide his strength. He directly released the earth force. In front of Yi Xian, the woman glanced at Yi Xian, Imperial Sword Aura and this earth force. You are that Yi Xian who was wanted by the Realm Protection Alliance? Yi Xian nodded. That's me. The woman walked in front of Yi Xian. She looked straight at Yi Xian. You killed a member of my ancient Wu clan. Yi Xian said seriously, heaven and earth can bear witness. He was the one who attacked first. The woman looked straight at Yi Xian. Do you think I don't dare to kill you? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Forgive me for asking, but is the ancient Wu clan stronger or the Realm Protection Alliance stronger? The woman's lips curled up. You want to tell me that if the Realm Protection Alliance doesn't dare to kill you, how could my ancient Wu clan dare? Yi Xian shook his head. Patriarch misunderstands. I came to the ancient Wu clan this time without any malicious intent. As for that clansman of yours, I have already let him off twice. Unfortunately, he did not cherish it. If Patriarch takes this matter to heart, then I can't do anything about it. The woman sat down on a wooden stool. She stared at Yi Xian. Go back and tell Qin Beihan that with this alliance, my ancient Wu clan has no way of forming an alliance with your Blue Sword sect. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Saying that, he turned around and left. The woman was stunned. This fellow didn't care at all? Yi Xian naturally didn't care. It wasn't that he didn't care about the Blue Sword sect, but he was very clear that whether or not these two great influences would form an alliance wasn't something a disciple like him could decide. The reason he came here, just as Shang Yu said, was to let the ancient Wu clan see the strength of the Blue Sword sect's younger generation. That was all. As for whether or not the alliance was formed, that was something for the Blue Sword sect patriarch to worry about. Yi Xian left decisively. He directly exited the treehouse and was about to fly away on his flying sword. But at this time, the ancient Wu clan patriarch suddenly said, Do you know what kind of situation your Blue Sword sect is in right now? Yi Xian stopped and shook his head. I'm not too sure. Ancient, this chapter has yet to end, please continue to the next page. The Wu clan patriarch coldly sneered. Everyone is watching your Blue Sword sect and the Realm Protection Alliance, waiting to see who wins and who loses. But what you don't know is that there are already many forces standing on the side of the Realm Protection Alliance. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm just an ordinary disciple. These are all matters that my Blue Sword sect patriarch should worry about. Even if Senior told me, it would be useless. The ancient Wu clan patriarch coldly sneered. Because of your momentary stubbornness, my ancient Wu clan has decided not to form an alliance with your Blue Sword sect. Do you know what this means to your Blue Sword sect? Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Patriarch, forgive me for being blunt. Whether to form an alliance or not, I'm afraid you have already made your decision. Am I right? The woman looked at Yi Xian but didn't say anything. Yi Xian continued, On the surface, the Realm Protection Alliance is indeed stronger than my Blue Sword sect. But how many people in the Blue Firmament world trust the Realm Protection Alliance? In order to achieve their goal, the Realm Protection Alliance didn't hesitate to sacrifice Blue Water Province and Azure Province. Do you know how many lives there are in these two provinces? However, in the eyes of the Realm Protection Alliance, these lives are truly worthless. Forming an alliance with them will not end well for you. The woman said indifferently, Then my ancient Wu clan can just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Yi Xian smiled. The Realm Protection Alliance is happy to see you like this. Because once they deal with a few of the more difficult to deal with, the rest of you will be easy for them to need. At that time, if your ancient Wu clan wishes to find someone to form an alliance with, you will find to your despair that there is no one left to contact. When he spoke up to hear, he turned to face the woman. Presently, there are many remote places in the central divine prefecture where the spirit energy is starting to dry up. Even an idiot would know that this is the doing of the Realm Protection Alliance. If the Realm Protection Alliance really wishes to destroy the central divine prefecture, then what will your ancient Wu clan do? At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the side. You don't have to worry about that. It was a beautiful woman. Obviously, she was a member of the ancient Wu clan as well. The beautiful woman glanced at Yi Xian and said, My ancient Wu clan has always stood aloof from the world. Our presence here doesn't harm the interests of the Realm Protection Alliance, so they won't act against us. Yi Xian smiled and said, If you think standing aloof from the world is a good thing, then I can't do anything about it. However, I have to say one more thing. In the current world, if one doesn't possess formidable strength or doesn't have formidable allies, then standing aloof from the world is simply waiting for death. To be honest, my ancient Wu clan isn't strong to the point that no one dares to offend you. The beautiful woman sneered. Will forming an alliance with your Blue Sword sect bring good results? If your Blue Sword sect is defeated, then wouldn't my ancient Wu clan be buried with your Blue Sword sect? Yi Xian nodded. You're right. If my Blue Sword sect is defeated, then our allies will definitely be finished as well. However, doing great things naturally comes with risks. But what if we win? The beautiful woman still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian shook his head and said, This matter is between you and my Blue Sword sect master. I Yi Xian am just an ordinary disciple. I've already arrived at the ancient Wu clan and conveyed my sect's purpose to you. My mission has been completed. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Finishing his words, he directly walked out of the treehouse and rode on his sword, disappearing into the horizon in a short while. Inside the treehouse, the beautiful woman was about to speak when both of them suddenly looked outside the treehouse at the same time. In the distant horizon, a sword light was flying towards them. The person who had just left was none other than Yi Xian. He's back again? Both of their brows furrowed. Yi Xian landed in front of the treehouse and then he walked into the treehouse. He bowed slightly to the two. I was impolite just now. Please don't blame me. And I think we can continue to chat. The two women. End of chapter. Chapter 295. Dao Laws. The reason why Yi Xian had returned was because of Dao Laws. The great god on the second floor said that there was the aura of Dao Laws here. Therefore Yi Xian had no choice but to return. Inside the treehouse, the two women just looked at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian to feel slightly unnatural. The beautiful woman suddenly said, Aren't you leaving? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly, I'm not leaving. When I first came to the ancient Wu clan I was attracted by this place. If the two of you don't mind, I would like to stay here for a few more days. We mind very much. The beautiful woman suddenly interrupted Yi Xian, You have a glib tongue and a cheeky smile, not a person who knows his place. As you said before, whether your Pale Sword sect and my ancient Wu clan can form an alliance is our matter. As for you, go back to where you came from. Yi Xian hurriedly said, No, as a disciple of the Pale Sword sect, the Pale Sword sect's matters are naturally my matters. Seniors, you might have misunderstood me before, but it's all right. When you truly get to know me, you'll realize that I'm actually a very, very good person. Hearing this, the beautiful woman's eyes twitched. How can your skin be so thick? Yi Xian. At this moment, the ancient Wu clan patriarch suddenly said, If he wants to stay, then let him stay. The beautiful woman was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly bowed. Thank you, patriarch. The ancient Wu clan patriarch glanced at Yi Xian. Leave. Remember, don't cause trouble, otherwise bear the consequences. Yi Xian hurriedly said, I'm a good person, I won't act recklessly. With that he left the treehouse. Inside the treehouse, the beautiful woman said in a low voice, This person is a little strange. The ancient Wu clan patriarch said indifferently, I know. The beautiful woman was somewhat puzzled. Then why do you want him to stay, patriarch? The patriarch of the ancient Wu clan said softly, Our ancient Wu clan doesn't interact with people outside the world all year round, so the younger generation knows very little about the outside world. Leaving him here can let the people in the clan see the geniuses outside and let them understand that there is always someone better than you out there. The beautiful woman nodded. That's true. Actually, it's not just the younger generation of the clan. Even some of the elders should go out and see the outside world. Otherwise, they will really think that our ancient Wu clan is invincible in the firmament world. The clan leader of the Gu Wu clan walked to the front of the treehouse. She glanced at Yi Xian, who was wandering around blindly. This man has a glib tongue. You have to watch him carefully. Don't let him do anything stupid. The beautiful woman nodded. I will keep an eye on him. Below, Yi Xian wandered around for a long time. Finally, he sat down on the side of the street. At this moment he was conversing with the god on the second floor. God on the second floor, did you sense it? Yi Xian asked. No. The god on the second floor answered directly. Yi Xian's face darkened. Didn't you just say that you sensed the power of the Dao Law? The god on the second floor said coldly, It's gone now. Yi Xian's face darkened even more. Are you messing with me? The second floor suddenly shook violently as if it was going crazy. Yi Xian was speechless. He hugged his head. What kind of temper was this? He got angry at the slightest provocation and went crazy at the slightest provocation. The problem was that he couldn't defend him. It was too aggrieving. Yi Xian really wanted to pull him out and beat him up. Unfortunately, his intuition told him that he couldn't beat the god on the second floor for the time being. About a quarter of an hour later, the god on the second floor finally calmed down. Yi Xian thought about it and said, "You sensed it earlier but then you couldn't. Is it possible that the aura of the Tao Law was concealed by something?" There was no answer. Yi Xian said solemnly, "If you find the Tao Law, you can come out." The god on the second floor suddenly said angrily, "Fine, I won't come out." Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Xian almost broke down because of this guy. Didn't he just say one sentence? Did he have to be angry to this extent? Was he King Kid? This chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. After a long time Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Well, God on the second floor, don't be angry. We have to work together. Only by working together can we achieve a win-win situation." A moment later, the god on the second floor suddenly said, "The aura of the Tao Law has disappeared, but it must be here. Look for it." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "What is this second Tao Law?" The god on the second floor said coldly, "I don't know." Yi Xian's face darkened. Was this guy still angry? At this moment, the god on the second floor said again, "This I really don't know." Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "You're on the second floor, how can you not know?" The god on the second floor asked in return, "You're the pagoda master. If you don't know, why must I know?" Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Xian didn't want to argue with the god on the second floor anymore. He had to let it calm down first, otherwise he wouldn't be able to communicate with it. Now he also realized that the god on the second floor was a petty guy. You couldn't say anything to it because it would go crazy if you did. Yi Xian walked down the street. Along the way he saw many people from the ancient Wu clan. He had to admit that the women from the ancient Wu clan were a little different from the women outside. The women here were relatively more cheerful and enthusiastic. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly stopped in front of a small stall. The stall owner was a little girl about 12 years old, wearing a blue floral dress with several whips tied on her head. She was selling a few bamboo tubes as long as an arm. Yi Xian pointed at the bamboo tubes curiously. "Little sister, what's in them?" The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. "Dew, morning dew." "Dew." Yi Xian was stunned, then asked, "What's the use?" The little girl said softly, "Of course, to drink." Yi Xian asked again, "How much is it?" The little girl raised a finger. 100 top-grade spirit stones for one tube. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. "Why don't you rob a bank? You sell one dew for 100 top-grade spirit stones." The little girl hugged her feet and didn't speak. Yi Xian picked up a bamboo tube, then opened it, and a fragrant smell hit his face. Yi Xian was shocked. He drank a mouthful and the water went down his throat. It was sweet and cool. After a while Yi Xian's expression became quite serious. Because he found that after the water entered his body, it actually started to cleanse the impurities in his body. Of course, the degree of cleansing was far inferior to his chaotic qi. But this was already extremely shocking to him. A treasure like marrow cleansing would cost an astronomical price in the outside world. 100 top-grade spirit stones was too cheap. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "Little sister, how many do you have?" The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. "What are you doing?" She was very vigilant. Yi Xian smiled. "How many do you have? I'll buy them for you. Because this thing of yours is very good." The little girl shook her head slightly. "It's very difficult to collect. It took me 10 days to collect just these few tubes." Yi Xian squatted down and said, "Then I'll take them all." After that, he took out 1,000 top-grade spirit stones and gave it to the little girl. The little girl was stunned, then she hurriedly shook her head. "Only 400, Yi Xian smiled. "The value of this thing of yours is far more than 100 top-grade spirit stones. In the end, I'm the one who made the profit." The little girl glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, "Can you do me a favor?" Yi Xian was slightly stunned and then he smiled. "What is it?" The little girl suddenly stood up, and then she pulled Yi Xian and ran not far away. Soon she brought Yi Xian to a treehouse. An old man was lying in the treehouse. The old man's face was pale, and his breath was faintly discernible. Obviously he was terminally ill. The little girl turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then he walked to the bedside. When he walked to the bedside he suddenly smelled a foul smell. It was the smell of rotting flesh. Seeing this, Yi Xian frowned deeply. Beside him, the little girl raised her head and looked at him, her eyes filled with a pleading look. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Yi Xian sighed softly. He took out a purple source pill and fed it to the old man. After taking the purple source pill, a stream of pure spiritual energy began to flow through the old man's body. Soon the old man's face began to regain color. Seeing this, the little girl was wild with joy. Then she hurriedly turned around and kowtowed to Yi Xian. Yi Xian pulled the little girl up. He rubbed the little girl's head and smiled. "Where are your parents?" The little girl slightly lowered her head. "They went outside with my brother." Yi Xian asked. "They didn't come back?" The little girl shook her head. "No." Hearing this, Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, the old man lying on the bed suddenly said, "Young man." Yi Xian turned to face the old man. The old man softly said, "This is a purple source pill, right?" Yi Xian was a little surprised. He did not expect the old man to know it. The old man looked at Yi Xian. "A purple source pill is much more precious than my old life. How could a young man like me who is about to die use it?" Yi Xian pointed at the little girl and smiled. "Looking at her, it's like looking at my little sister." The little girl glanced at Yi Xian and did not say anything. The old man softly said, "Compassion." Yi Xian smiled. "I still have things to do, so I'll be leaving first." After saying this, he was about to leave. At this moment, the old man suddenly said, "Young man, wait a moment." Yi Xian turned to face the old man. The old man looked at the little girl. This girl's parents left with her brother when she was 3 years old. She is a pitiful person. This old man will not live for long. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian softly said, "The ancient Wu clan will take care of her, right?" The old man shook his head. "I don't want anything bad to happen to her." "Young man, you are willing to use a purple source pill on this old man. This proves that you are kind-hearted and a person with great love. If she follows you, she will not suffer." After saying this, he just looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he looked at the little girl. The little girl slightly lowered her head and pinched the corner of her skirt. No one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian knew what the little girl was thinking because he once knew what his sister was thinking. His sister's experience was not much different from this little girl's. Yi Xian walked to the little girl's side and smiled. "Are you willing to go with me?" The little girl looked up at Yi Xian. Her tears fell at once. However, she shook her head. I want to take care of Grandpa." At the side, the old man suddenly said, "Go with him." The little girl looked at the old man. The old man slowly closed his eyes. "Girl, this might be the only time you can change your fate. As for Grandpa, Grandpa is not important. You just need to come back and see Grandpa in the future. That will be enough." The little girl still wanted to say something, but the old man shook his head. "If you are not obedient, Grandpa will immediately die in front of you." The little girl's tears flowed continuously. She just looked at the old man. The old man waved at Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked to the bedside. The old man took out a pitch-black scroll and handed it to Yi Xian. "This was left by our ancestors. It has been passed down from generation to generation in my family. As for its use, we haven't been able to figure it out. Take it." Yi Xian glanced at the scroll. He hesitated for a moment before keeping the scroll. Then he walked to the little girl. "Let's go." The little girl suddenly placed the 1,000 top-grade spirit stones that Yi Xian gave her by the old man's bedside. Then she turned around and walked to Yi Xian's side. She wanted to pull Yi Xian's arm, but she hesitated. Yi Xian took the initiative to pull her hand and walked out of the treehouse. Outside the treehouse, Yi Xian smiled and asked, "What's your name?" The little girl said softly, "Wei Yang Tian." Yi Xian was a little surprised. "Who gave it to you?" The little girl said softly, "I don't know." At this point, she paused slightly and looked up at Yi Xian. "Is it not nice?" Yi Xian smiled. "It's nice." At this moment, the little girl hesitated and wanted to say something. Yi Xian asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" The little girl pointed at Yi Xian's abdomen. "That pagoda is dangerous." Yi Xian was stunned. End of this chapter. Chapter 296. Yi Xian was completely stunned. Because he really did not expect this little girl to know that there was a pagoda in his body. Up until now, among all the powerhouses he met in the Azure Firmament world, even the middle-aged man at the bottom of the abyss where he obtained the spatial Tao law, none of them had discovered that there was a pagoda in his body. How did this little girl discover it? Yi Xian squatted down and held the little girl's hand, asking seriously, "How did you discover that there is a pagoda in Big Brother's body?" Wei Yang Tian said softly, "I saw it." "I saw it." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "How did you see it?" Wei Yang Tendo said, "I saw it." Yi Xian smiled. "Then what else can you see?" Wei Yang Tian looked at Yi Xian. She was a little hesitant. Yi Xian smiled. "It's okay, just say it." Wei Yang Tian glanced at Yi Xian's abdomen and said softly, "There is a dangerous person in the pagoda." Yi Xian said softly, "You can see the person in the pagoda?" Wei Yang Tian nodded. Yi Xian fell silent. This matter was a little complicated. Originally he thought this little girl was just an ordinary little girl, but now it seemed that things were not that simple. This was not an ordinary little girl at all. At this time Wei Yangtian suddenly said, "Big brother, I said something wrong?" Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. "You're not wrong." As he said, he gently rubbed Wei Yangtian's little head. "What do you plan to do in the future?" Wei Yangtian looked up at Yi Xian, her eyes filled with determination. "Cultivate." "Cultivate?" Yi Xian smiled. "Why cultivate?" Wei Yangtian clenched her fists, her eyes suddenly turning red. Yi Xian said softly, "Don't cry, since you want to cultivate, then Big Brother will help you. However, you have to promise me, no matter how strong you are in the future, you are not to mess around, understand?" His intuition told him that this little girl's future achievements might not be low. If this kind of person lost hope in the world from a young age and became extreme in character, it would be a disaster for the world if she became powerful in the future. Wei Yangtian held onto Yi Xian's hand tightly. I won't hurt Big Brother." Yi Xian smiled and said, "All right, let's go find a place to rest first." After saying so, he pulled Endless Sky away. An hour later, Yi Xian found an unoccupied treehouse. Inside the treehouse he cooked some food. When Wei Yangtian saw the food, she immediately started drooling. She just stared at it eagerly. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Hurry up and eat." Hearing this, unending heaven immediately started sweeping the area. Yi Xian suddenly felt his heart ache when he saw endless heaven wiping out the monsters in a frenzy. Because the little lass before him must have suffered a lot. Just like his younger sister Yi Ling. When he hadn't grown up, the two of them never had a meal. Sometimes they didn't even have a meal a day. At many times, the world was as cruel as it could be. But if a person didn't work hard, then the world would forever be cruel to that person. Meanwhile, Endless Sky seemed to have thought of something, and she suddenly raised her head to look at Yi Xian. Aren't you going to eat?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Yes, let's eat together." As soon as he finished speaking, he started eating as well. A wisp of a smile instantly appeared on Endless Sky's face. Just like that, it didn't take long for the two of them to finish the table. After he finished cleaning up, Yi Xian took out Endless Sky. "This chapter isn't finished, please keep going." He opened the scroll the Lord had given him. There were some strange talismans on the scroll. He couldn't understand them at all. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he tapped it with his finger. A drop of blood essence fell onto the scroll. However, there was no reaction at all. "What's this?" Yi Xian frowned. It wouldn't be just an ordinary piece of skin, right? Right at this moment, Endless Sky suddenly said, "Big Brother, it's a map." "A map?" Yi Xian faced Endless Sky. "How do you know it's a map?" Wei Yangtian pointed at the scroll. "I can read it." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Then why didn't you tell your grandfather and the others?" Endless Sky shook her head. "Grandfather and the others are too weak. If I told them, then it might kill them. But Big Brother is different. Big Brother is very strong." Yi Xian sighed with emotion in his heart, and then he rubbed Endless Sky's head lightly. What a thoughtful little girl. Earlier he'd sensed the old man's aura in the treehouse, and it wasn't weak at all. It was a technique control realm expert. Unfortunately, the old man was at the end of his life. Just as Endless Sky had said, if she told the old man the truth, then it was very likely that she would harm the old man instead. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, "Do you know how to get there?" Endless Sky nodded. "You can follow this route. Big Brother, do you want to go?" Yi Xian smiled. "Will it be dangerous?" Endless Sky shook her head. "Big Brother is very strong, so there shouldn't be any danger." Yi Xian smiled. "Then let's go." As he spoke, he pulled Endless Sky along with him and left the treehouse. It didn't take long for them to enter a boundless mountain range. All along the way, Endless Sky held tightly onto Yi Xian's hand, and she would glance at Yi Xian from time to time. However, she would quickly withdraw her gaze when Yi Xian looked at her. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Why do you keep peeping at me?" Endless Sky spoke softly. "Big Brother is a good person." Yi Xian smiled. "It's very difficult to distinguish between a good person and a bad person at most times. For example, Big Brother is a good person to you, but it's very likely that he's a bad person to others, a super bad person." Endless Sky glanced at Yi Xian, and then she lowered her head slightly. "In any case, Big Brother is a good person." Yi Xian smiled as he rubbed Endless Sky's little head, and then he didn't say anything else. In fact, for Yi Xian, most of the time he really sympathized with those at the bottom. Because he had climbed his way up from the bottom. He knew very well how helpless a person without strength was most of the time. It was even despair. So when he saw Endless Sky, he practically didn't hesitate to choose to help her, and he didn't have any ulterior motives in doing so. However, Yi Xian didn't know that the reason Endless Sky trusted him so much was because she'd seen through this. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian and Endless Sky entered a gorge. The gorge was very large and the mountains on both sides towered into the clouds. After entering the gorge, a feeling of insignificance arose involuntarily in their hearts. Meanwhile, Endless Sky stopped. She opened the scroll and after reading it for a long time, she glanced at the surroundings. In the end, she looked at a mountain wall on her right. There? Yi Xian asked. Endless Sky pointed at the mountain wall in the distance. If one looked carefully, one would notice a crack on the mountain wall. This crack seemed like a natural crack and there was nothing special about it at first glance. Yi Xian grabbed Endless Sky's hand and flew up on his sword. Endless Sky hurriedly hugged Yi Xian, and she pressed her head tightly against Yi Xian's chest in slight fear. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive at the crack, and there was a stone door not too far away from him. Yi Xian pulled Endless Sky over, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. A ray of light shot out violently. The stone door split right down the middle. Behind the stone door there was a huge gust of wind. Please continue to the next page. There was a grotto heaven. It really was a map. Yi Xian pulled Endless Sky through the stone door, and the two of them walked down the stone steps. In no time they arrived before a pool, and in the middle of the pool floated a coffin. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and it was completely silent. There was no sound at all. In the end, Yi Xian faced the coffin in the distant pool. He was about to walk over when Endless Sky suddenly grabbed his hand and shook her head. She pointed at the bottom of the pool and said, "There's something. There's something." Yi Xian unleashed his divine consciousness. However, as soon as his divine consciousness entered the pool, it immediately disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression became slightly solemn. Not simple. After a moment's hesitation, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait here. Are you afraid?" Endless Sky hurriedly nodded, but it didn't take long for her to shake her head. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. Even if something happens, the existence down there will definitely come looking for me first." As soon as he finished speaking, he rubbed Endless Sky's little head lightly, and then he floated towards the coffin. This time he'd utilized chaotic energy. At this moment, his aura was completely devoid, and it was like he didn't exist at all. In next to no time, Yi Xian arrived above the coffin. The coffin was covered in all sorts of strange violet talismans, and they covered the entire coffin. Besides that, there were numerous black threads around the coffin, and they were like a black net that covered the entire coffin. What's this? Yi Xian's brows knit together tightly. His intuition told him that the existence here might not be a benevolent being. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he looked at Endless Sky and said, "Can you see through it?" Endless Sky shook her head. "Something's blocking it." Something. Yi Xian faced the coffin beneath him. Needless to say, it was probably because of the talismans and black threads. Because he noticed that his divine sense would vanish without a trace the moment it came into contact with the coffin. "Can I open it?" Yi Xian was in a slightly difficult position. At this moment, his intuition told him that the existence within this coffin was definitely not a benevolent being, and he might be in great trouble if he opened it. But the problem was, how could he be willing to leave now? He wasn't willing at all. Above the coffin, Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he decided to open it in the end. Fortune came from danger. Of course, it was mainly because he was confident in his own strength. Currently, he would even be able to fight an expert at the true Imperial Magic realm. Yi Xian tapped with his finger, and a strand of sword light slashed directly onto the surface of the coffin. The talismans and black threads on the coffin actually started to crack inch by inch, and it didn't take long for them to actually vanish slowly. After the talismans and black threads disappeared, Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then he started to slowly open the coffin's lid. Soon, the coffin's lid was opened, and there was a woman lying in the coffin. A woman in a bright red dress. The woman's face was pale, and she had on alluring makeup. Her appearance was peerless and very beautiful. A woman? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he bent down. At this moment, the woman suddenly opened her eyes. Yi Xian was immediately petrified in the air. At this moment, the silence seemed to have frozen. P.S. Happy New Year to everyone again. Thank you for your company all these years. When I first entered this industry, I didn't expect to persist until now. It's because of everyone's genuine subscriptions that I have food to eat and the motivation to write. Thank you all. Thank you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 297. Inside the coffin, the lady in red just stared at Yi Xian. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. After a while, Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. Sorry for the interruption. Sorry for the interruption. After saying that, he was about to close the coffin lid. At this moment, the lady in red suddenly extended her right hand to block the coffin lid. At the same time, a blood-red glow enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. His figure shuddered, and he retreated to Wei Yangtian's side. Wei Yangtian quickly grabbed Yi Xian's arm and held it tightly. Yi Xian looked at the coffin above the pool in the distance. Inside the coffin, the lady in red slowly floated up. Her red dress was very long and it looked a little like a wedding dress. In the air, the lady in red looked down at Yi Xian, her eyes filled with coldness. Yi Xian gripped his sword tightly in his right hand, and he quickly said inwardly, "Second floor guru, do you want to come out and perform?" The Almighty on the second floor sneered and didn't respond. This was the sound of gloating. Yi Xian's face darkened. The second floor guru was too unreliable. At this moment, the lady in red suddenly floated in front of him and Wei Yangtian. She looked down at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "Congratulations, senior. You don't have to thank me. My greatest weakness is that I like to help others. Of course, if senior wants to thank me, you can just give me any heaven-grade treasure." The lady in red suddenly slammed her palm down, and Yi Xian's expression changed. He quickly pulled Wei Yangtian behind him and then he stabbed out with his sword. Facing this mysterious lady, Yi Xian naturally did not dare to be careless. He immediately executed the single sword determines life and death. Not only that, but he also enhanced it with the evil thought sword intent. The sword struck out. Boom. Yi Xian was directly shaken to the point of retreating explosively, and only when he retreated in front of the mountain wall did he forcefully stop. After Yi Xian stopped, a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He raised his head and looked at the woman in red who was not far away. This woman was so strong. In the air, the woman in red glanced at Yi Xian. In the next moment, she suddenly waved her right hand lightly at Yi Xian. In an instant, a stream of water suddenly floated up from the pool beneath her. The stream of water was like an arrow that had been released from a bow as it shot towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a quick step forward and slashed with his sword with both hands. Boom. Yi Xian's sword forcefully shattered the water arrow. At this time, a red shadow suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Without thinking, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Bang. A figure flew out in an instant. The person who flew out was none other than Yi Xian. As soon as Yi Xian landed, Wei Yangtian hurriedly ran to his side and hugged his arm tightly. His eyes were filled with anxiety. In the distance, the woman in red was about to attack again when Yi Xian suddenly stood up. "Wait." The woman in red stopped and looked at Yi Xian as if waiting for Yi Xian's reply. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Your Excellency, I rescued you but you want to kill me. Don't you think this is too much?" The woman in red was expressionless. "Did I ask you to rescue me?" "Yi Xian," the woman in red shook her head. "I didn't ask you to rescue me." As soon as she finished speaking, her lily-white hand suddenly pointed at Yi Xian from afar. In an instant, the space where Yi Xian was directly turned blood-red. What kind of technique was this? Yi Xian's expression changed. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he suddenly clenched his right hand tightly. As soon as he spoke, the space where he and Wei Yangtian were shrunk, and then a small spatial cage was formed. The blood-red energy was completely unable to approach Yi Xian and Wei Yangtian. Wei Yangtian. The woman in red's beautiful brows knit together slightly. What technique is this? Yi Xian pulled Wei Yangtian behind him, and then he thought for a moment before he said, "Spatial divine ability." The woman in red sized Yi Xian up. "You can leave now." Yi Xian was stunned and then he said, "You're not fighting anymore?" The woman's face was expressionless. "You can fight if you want." Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No, I don't want to fight." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled Wei Yangtian along as he turned around and left. Meanwhile, the woman in red suddenly said, "How did you find this place?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he withdrew the map. The woman glanced at the map, and then her eyes narrowed slightly. It was him. As she spoke, she gazed at Yi Xian. "You're his descendant?" Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. "No. I only obtained this map by chance." The woman gazed at Yi Xian for a long time. "Help me do something." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, "What is it?" The woman looked Yi Xian in the eyes. "Give me a child." "Child?" Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment he suddenly leaped up. No, no. How can I do that? No, no. I Yi Xian am not that kind of person. The woman suddenly spoke angrily. What are you thinking? I'm asking you to find me a child. Yi Xian's lips twitched. Then speak clearly. The woman in red stared at Yi Xian with an unfriendly expression. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, why do you want a child? The woman in red coldly said, This has nothing to do with you. Yi Xian shook his head. Then I can't find one for Senior. The woman's eyes gradually turned cold. Do you want to die? Yi Xian sternly said, Senior, do you know who I am? Without waiting for the woman to reply, he continued. I'm the next sect leader candidate of Pale Sword Sect. Have you heard of Pale Sword Sect? If not, then have you heard of the Pale World Sword Master? The woman in red calmly said. Why? Are you threatening me? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No, no. I just want to tell Senior that if anything happens to me, my Pale Sword Sect will definitely not let it go. The woman in red was expressionless. Do you think I'm afraid of your Pale Sword Sect? Yi Xian sternly said, Senior, there's no need for us to be in such a deadlock. Tell me, why are you looking for a child? The woman in red looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Then she said, I want to leave this world. I hope someone can inherit my ancient shaman secret technique. Yi Xian hurriedly pointed at himself. Me. Senior, I have extraordinary talent. You have to pass down all your abilities to me. Wei Yang Tian glanced at Yi Xian. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. The woman in red's eyes twitched. How can you be so shameless? Yi Xian sternly said, Senior, I'm not joking. I really can do it. If you pass it down to me, then I won't disgrace Senior's abilities. The woman in red waved her hand. My inheritance can only be given to women. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment he revealed a slightly vigilant expression. He was extremely vigilant. He hurriedly pulled Wei Yang Tian behind him. The atmosphere here had become slightly heavy. The woman glanced at Yi Xian, and then she gazed at Wei Yang Tian. Are you willing to take me as your master? Wei Yang Tian was stunned, and then she gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was extremely gloomy. This woman's target from the beginning might have been Wei Yang Tian, because if she really wanted to find an heir, then she could just leave and look for one in the outside world. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Why did Senior take a liking to her? The woman in red spoke indifferently. Is it related to you? Yi Xian pulled Wei Yang Tian along as he turned around and left. Stop right there. Right at this moment, the woman spoke coldly. Do you want to die? Yi Xian turned around and laughed coldly. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian took a step forward. In an instant, a sword floated in his palm. At the same time, a powerful pressure swept out from within him. The might of the Sword Emperor. The woman in red laughed coldly. A mere Sword Emperor dares to act arrogantly before me? As she spoke, she was about to attack. Meanwhile, Wei Yang Tian, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke abruptly. I'm willing to learn from you. The woman in red stopped and gazed at Wei Yang Tian. Really? Wei Yang Tian nodded slightly. But you can't harm Big Brother. The woman in red glanced at Yi Xian. This fellow has a glib tongue and his skin is thicker than a city wall. You'll learn bad things from him sooner or later. Wei Yang Tian shook her head. Big Brother is a good person. The woman in red glanced at Yi Xian. He doesn't seem like a good person. Yi Xian was speechless. Just like that, Wei Yang Tian started to learn from the woman in red. Meanwhile, Yi Xian didn't leave because he couldn't stop worrying about Wei Yang Tian. The woman in red didn't seem like a good person to him. Actually, she didn't seem like a good person to him either. However, there was no need to doubt the strength of this woman in red. After a day or two, he noticed that the woman in red was sincerely teaching Wei Yang Tian. Moreover, Wei Yang Tian's ability to learn things could be described as terrifying. Extremely terrifying. Because she learned everything in a short time. Even the woman in red was extremely shocked by this. However, she was mostly happy. Just like that, a few days passed. On this day, the woman in red suddenly called Yi Xian over. Wei Yang Tian hurriedly grabbed Yi Xian's hand when she saw him, and then she spoke excitedly, Big Brother, look. As she spoke, she pressed down lightly towards the pool of water in the distance. It didn't take long for a vortex to form there. That wasn't the end of it. She gestured lightly with her fair hand, and the water in the pool actually floated up slowly before it formed into the shape of a person. It was exactly Yi Xian's appearance. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he shook his head and smiled. Amazing. Wei Yang Tian grew even more excited when she received Yi Xian's praise. Meanwhile, the woman in red suddenly said, "Little girl, go meditate and comprehend what I just taught you." Wei Yangtian nodded, and then she ran over and sat down cross-legged. After she sent Wei Yangtian away, the woman in red looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know her true origins?" Yi Xian shook his head. The woman in red frowned deeply. After a short moment, she glanced at the nearby Wei Yangtian. "She's no ordinary person." Yi Xian nodded. "I know." The woman in red looked at Yi Xian. "I want her to become the clan leader of the Gu Wu clan." Yi Xian shook his head decisively. "No." The woman in red spoke coldly. "Why not?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "I don't want her to be swept into that vortex of power." The woman in red fell silent for a moment and then she said, "It's just a matter of a word from me." Yi Xian gazed at the woman in red. "Who are you?" The woman in red glanced at Yi Xian. "I founded the Gu Wu clan. Who do you think I am?" Yi Xian was stunned and then he hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, big boss." Chapter 298. Needless to say, Yi Xian was still quite shocked at this moment. Because he hadn't expected that the woman before him was actually the founder of the ancient Wu clan. The woman glanced at Wei Yangtian and then she said softly, "Her cultivation speed and learning ability aren't something an ordinary person should have. But I can't see through her." When she spoke up to this point, she looked at Yi Xian. "It's like I can't see through you." Yi Xian smiled. "Why can't I see through you?" The woman took a deep look at Yi Xian, but she didn't say anything. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, I'm curious about something. Why did you imprison yourself in a coffin?" The woman's face was expressionless. "I was imprisoned." Yi Xian furrowed his brows. "With your strength." The woman glanced at Yi Xian. "Usually, it isn't your enemies that can hurt you, but the people you trust the most." Yi Xian fell silent. There was no doubt that the woman before him had been betrayed by the people closest to her. The woman tapped with her finger and a pitch-black ring flew to Yi Xian. "This is the ring of the ancient Wu clan's clan leader. Take her to the ancient Wu clan, and they'll naturally know what to do." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Senior, forgive me for being blunt, but it's not very realistic to ask the ancient Wu clan to acknowledge her as their clan leader just because of a ring." The woman spoke indifferently, "Take her there and give it a try and you'll know." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he nodded, "Let's give it a try." As he spoke, he chuckled, "Senior, do you have anything you don't want, like a heaven-grade spirit artifact? If you do, give it to me." The woman glanced coldly at Yi Xian. "Are you really a swordsman?" Yi Xian was speechless. The woman spoke again, "Don't even think about it. How could I possibly have those rubbish things? As for those that are too precious, they won't give them to you." Yi Xian's face twitched. "If there's nothing, then there's nothing. What's the big deal?" 2 days later, Yi Xian prepared to leave with Endless Sky. Inside the cave, Wei Yangtian bowed to the woman in red. "Master, aren't you coming with us?" The woman in red was about to speak when her expression suddenly changed. This was because she discovered that at least 100 years of her lifespan had been lost in an instant. 100 years of life. As if she thought of something, she looked at Endless Sky with an extremely solemn expression. Just now this girl had bowed to her. Then, her 100 years of lifespan was gone. The red-clothed woman took a deep glance at Wei Yangtian, and then she said, "I have other matters to attend to, so I can't leave with all of you." Hearing that, Wei Yangtian's expression dimmed slightly. Over the past few days, she had developed a good impression of the woman in red. The red-clothed woman tapped with her finger, and a ray of red light suddenly entered the center of Wei Yangtian's forehead. She was stunned for quite a while, and then she gazed at the red-clothed woman. "Master, what's this?" The red-clothed woman said, "A treasure I left for you. You'll be able to withdraw it once you attain the true control realm." When she spoke up to hear, she glanced at Yi Xian and seemed to be slightly warning him. Yi Xian had an emotionless expression on his face. "Don't worry, Senior. I won't have any designs on this precious little girl." The red-clothed woman gazed at Wei Yangtian. "You have to be vigilant against everyone. Understand?" Wei Yangtian nodded. "Besides Big Brother." Yi Xian chuckled and was extremely happy. The red-clothed woman glanced coldly at Yi Xian. "I'll leave this little girl to you. Treat her well, and it'll definitely be boundlessly beneficial to you in the future." Yi Xian pulled Wei Yangtian back and said, "Senior, if there's nothing else, then we'll be leaving." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around with Wei Yangtian. "This chapter isn't finished, please continue." They left. When they arrived at the door, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something. and he stopped abruptly before he turned around to face the red-clothed woman. "Senior, can you do me a small favor?" "Just a small favor." The red-clothed woman glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak a word. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "I've been unhappy with that Exalt Lu from the Realm Defense Alliance for a very long time. Senior, can you help me beat him up?" The red-clothed woman still didn't speak. Yi Xian shrugged, and then he pulled Wei Yangtian along and left the cave. Outside the cave, Yi Xian shot into the sky on his sword while Wei Yangtian held him tightly behind him. At this moment she wasn't as afraid as she had been before, and she was slightly excited instead. Within the cave, the red-clothed woman remained silent for a very long time, and then she spoke softly. "Exactly what sort of existence is this little girl?" A short moment later, the red-clothed woman swept the cave with her gaze, and her expression gradually turned gloomy. "This matter isn't over even if you run off to the boundless starry sky." As soon as she finished speaking, her entire body disappeared. The red-clothed woman didn't leave the firmament world. Instead, she went to the Realm Defense Mountain. As soon as the red-clothed woman arrived at the Realm Defense Mountain, a middle-aged man appeared in front of her. This person was the Realm Defense Alliance's Exalt Lu. Exalt Lu stared at the red-clothed woman with a trace of fear in his eyes. The red-clothed woman glanced at Exalt Lu and said indifferently, "You're Exalt Lu?" Exalt Lu nodded slightly. "You are?" The red-clothed woman didn't answer, and instead raised her hand to press down on Exalt Lu. With this press, the space where Exalt Lu was instantly distorted into a strange arc. Seeing that the red-clothed woman had attacked without a second word, Exalt Lu's expression instantly turned cold, and he pressed down with his right hand. Boom! A powerful force vibrated from his palm, and the space around him instantly rippled like water. At this moment, the red-clothed woman suddenly disappeared. In the distance, Exalt Lu's expression changed drastically, and he punched forward. Bang! Along with a shocking explosion, Exalt Lu was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back, and when he stopped moving, the space behind him had actually cracked apart. Space had been shattered. Exalt Lu stared fixedly at the red-clothed woman. "Who exactly are you? Why have you come to my Realm Defense Alliance?" The red-clothed woman glanced at Exalt Lu. "I was asked by someone to come and beat you up." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly pressed her palms together, and then she suddenly slashed forward. The space in front of the red-clothed woman split apart layer by layer, and a powerful force tore through everything as it headed straight for Exalt Lu. Exalt Lu's pupils constricted slightly, and he didn't dare act carelessly. He waved his right hand and a powerful aura swept out from his arm. At the same time he took a step forward and pointed forward with his finger. A strange vortex formed in space where his finger descended. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! An enormous bang that shook the heavens resounded in the sky, and then a figure retreated explosively by over a kilometer. It was Exalt Lu. At this moment, blood was flowing slowly from the corners of Exalt Lu's mouth. Exalt Lu stared fixedly at the red-clothed woman. "Who asked you to do this?" The red-clothed woman's face was expressionless. "His name is Yi Xian." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished into the horizon. Exalt Lu's expression was extremely unsightly, and a moment later, a furious howl suddenly resounded through the sky. Exalt Lu hated Yi Xian to the bone. He'd already had a way to deal with the mysterious woman and eliminate Yi Xian, but now the Pale Sword sect was protecting Yi Xian. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Most importantly, with the terrifying speed of Yi Xian's growth, it wouldn't be long before Yi Xian became a sword immortal. At that time, it would be even more difficult to eliminate him. Exalt Lu's expression grew even gloomier when he thought of this. A short while later, Exalt Lu turned around and returned to the hall, and then he closed his eyes slowly. "How long more until our people arrive?" A voice resounded from a dark corner. 10 days at most." Exalt Lu asked again. "How long more until the matter at Azure Prefecture?" The voice said again, "It will take another 10 days or so." Exalt Lu fell silent for a moment and then he said, "We'll obtain the quintessence heart of Azure Prefecture first, then eliminate the Pale Sword sect and Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Yi Xian brought Wei Yangtian back to the ancient Wu clan, and he brought Wei Yangtian to the treehouse where the Wu clan's patriarch resided. Within the treehouse, the Wu clan's patriarch glanced at Yi Xian. "What's the matter?" Yi Xian nodded, and then he withdrew the ring that the red-clothed woman had given him. When he saw the ring, the Wu clan's patriarch instantly seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning, and his entire body stiffened on the spot. A short moment later, the Wu clan's patriarch gazed at Yi Xian. "Where did you get this?" Yi Xian gave the ring to Wei Yangtian and said, "A senior left it to this little girl. Moreover, that senior even passed down his entire inheritance to this little girl." The Wu clan's patriarch gazed at Wei Yangtian when he heard Yi Xian. Wei Yangtian held tightly onto Yi Xian's hand, and she was looking at the Wu clan's patriarch as well. A short while later, the Wu clan's patriarch spoke abruptly, "Gather all the elders." It didn't take long for around 10 people to appear within the treehouse. Among these 10 people, there were actually 7 true defensive Dharma realm experts. Yi Xian was instantly quite shocked when he witnessed this scene. Needless to say, he'd slightly underestimated the Wu clan's strength. The Wu clan's patriarch glanced at Yi Xian. "We have something to discuss." Yi Xian was just about to speak when Wei Yangtian held tightly onto his arm. When she saw this, the Wu clan's patriarch spoke in a low voice, "Then stay." As soon as she finished speaking, she glanced at the others. "Tell me what all of you think." It didn't take long for them to start discussing, and they frequently glanced at Wei Yangtian while their eyes were filled with curiosity. Around 2 hours later, the Wu clan's patriarch walked over to Yi Xian. "We've decided to make her the junior patriarch of the Wu clan. Once she comes of age, we'll make her the patriarch of the Wu clan." Yi Xian faced Wei Yangtian. Wei Yangtian's tears instantly flowed from her eyes, and she just gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly squatted down. "Why are you crying all of a sudden?" Wei Yangtian wiped off the tears on her face and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled. "You think that I don't want you anymore, right?" Wei Yangtian nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "If you really don't want to stay here, then you can leave with me." "No." The Wu clan's patriarch suddenly said, "She can't leave with you." Yi Xian faced the Wu clan's patriarch and the latter spoke in a low voice. "Although she has obtained the inheritance of her ancestors, she hasn't fully absorbed it. If she leaves with you, you're a swordsman, so you won't be of any help to her cultivation." As she spoke, she looked at Wei Yangtian. "You'll become even stronger if you stay here." Wei Yangtian was about to refuse when the Wu clan's patriarch suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. "He can stay with the Wu clan as well." Wei Yangtian instantly hesitated when she heard this. Just then, a man suddenly walked in and bowed slightly to the Wu clan's patriarch. "Patriarch, the Realm Defense Alliance has sent someone." "The Realm Defense Alliance?" Yi Xian frowned deeply when he heard this. End of this chapter. Chapter 299. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was quite solemn. After a moment, the Gu Wu clan patriarch suddenly said, "Invite him in." Soon an old man walked in. This person was none other than Emoshio. After Emoshio entered the treehouse, his gaze directly fell on Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. "Grand Elder Emoshio, I haven't seen you for a few days, how have you been?" Emoshio said indifferently, "I'm very good, I just don't know how you are." Yi Xian laughed. "I'm very good, very very good." Emoshio's face was expressionless. "I wonder if you have considered the matter I spoke of that day." "Matter?" Yi Xian was stunned and then said, "What matter?" Emoshio's eyes narrowed. "It seems that you haven't considered it." Yi Xian suddenly understood. "You want me to go to the Realm Defense Alliance to do the young Exalt Lord's matter?" "Everyone?" Emoshio stared fixedly at Yi Xian, not speaking. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. "Elder Emo, I won't argue with you. Let's be honest, even if I join the Realm Defense Alliance, will your Realm Defense Alliance really trust me? You won't. For an outstanding person like me, your Realm Defense Alliance will only feel at ease if you kill me, right?" Emoshio stared at Yi Xian for a long time, and then said, "What are you talking about? So long as you sincerely join my Realm Defense Alliance, my Realm Defense Alliance will definitely treat you well." Yi Xian laughed. "Like hell I'll believe you, you old man, you're very bad." Emoshio said indifferently, "Since it's like this, then the old man won't say anything." As he spoke, he turned to look at the nearby Gu Wu clan patriarch. "Gu clan patriarch, you should already be aware of the old man's purpose for coming this time. The Blue Sword sect has committed countless crimes and committed many unjust acts. We—" Stop. Yi Xian suddenly interrupted Emoshio. "Elder Emo, you have to speak with a conscience. How is my Blue Sword sect guilty of so many crimes?" As he spoke, he walked in front of Emoshio. "I feel that if we are talking about evil, who in this Azure Firmament world can compare to your Realm Defense Alliance? How many people were there in the Kanglan province? How many living beings were there? How did they all die? They were all killed by your Realm Defense Alliance. Don't you have any idea what the current situation is in the Green Province?" Emoshio glared at Yi Xian. "You're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. Yi Xian was fearless. He opened his right hand and a sword appeared in his palm. Right at this moment, the nearby Gu Wu clan's patriarch suddenly said, "Wait." Emoshio stopped and looked at the Gu Wu clan patriarch. The latter spoke in a low voice, "Both of you, this is not the Realm Defense Alliance, nor is it the Blue Sword Sect." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Understood, understood." As he spoke, he retreated to the side. Meanwhile, Emoshio suddenly said, "Gu Clan Patriarch, my Realm Defense Alliance sincerely invites the Gu Wu clan to form an alliance with us. Towards this we're very sincere. Not only have we found a treasured land with abundant spirit energy for all of you, we've even provided you with a jade-grade spirit vein. For the next few decades, your Gu Wu clan will have no worries about spirit energy." When they heard this, the expressions of the Gu Wu clan and the others within the treehouse were slightly moved. Presently, the biggest problem the Gu Wu clan faced was that the spirit energy in the area they resided in was starting to dry up. This was also the reason why they'd sought out the Blue Sword Sect. It was because they hoped to be able to leave this mountain and find a new treasured land. Yet now, the Realm Defense Alliance had directly obtained what they needed. At the side, Yi Xian's expression sank. Meanwhile, Emoshio said, "Everyone besides the Gu Wu clan, there are many other powers and aristocratic families in the firmament world that have clearly expressed their support for my Realm Defense Alliance. Even though my Realm Defense Alliance is somewhat ambitious, but the old man guarantees that my Realm Defense Alliance absolutely has the heart to accept others. The firmament world is too big and it can accommodate many people. Of course." When he spoke up to here, he glanced coldly at the nearby Yi Xian and said, "Of course, there are some people that my Realm Defense Alliance absolutely can't tolerate." Yi Xian smiled, and then he turned to the Gu Wu clan patriarch and said, "Gu clan patriarch, since Elder Emo has spoken openly, then I won't say anything more. Gu clan patriarch and the other elders, please make the decision." The Gu Wu clan patriarch glanced at Yi Xian, and then she looked at Emoshio and said, "Elder Emo, where exactly is this treasure you speak of?" Emoshio smiled and said, "South Mountain. It was originally the property of my Realm Defense Alliance, and there is a jade-grade spirit vein beneath it. The Gu Wu clan can go there after they leave. Besides that, the Gu Wu clan's future matters are my Realm Defense Alliance's matters." In the treehouse, all the elders of the Gu Wu clan discussed animatedly. After a short moment, the Gu Wu clan patriarch said in a low voice, "Is what Elder Emo said true?" Emoshio smiled and said, "Of course. However, I have a small condition." When he spoke up to here, he glanced at Yi Xian and said, "This person is a great enemy of my Realm Defense Alliance. Now that he's here, the old man would like to invite everyone to join me in capturing this person. This shouldn't be a problem, right?" When she heard Emoshio, Wei Yang Tian hurriedly walked over to stand by Yi Xian's side, and she stared fixedly at Emoshio with a hostile expression. The Gu Wu clan patriarch had a rather troubled expression when she witnessed this scene. Kill Yi Xian. That represented that he'd truly broken off all relations with the Firmament Sword Sect. It wasn't just a break-off, it was the type that would become mortal enemies. The atmosphere in the treehouse suddenly became heavy. Yi Xian smiled and didn't speak. Meanwhile, Emoshio suddenly said, "What? Could it be that Patriarch Gu has other thoughts?" The Gu Wu clan patriarch's expression was extremely gloomy. She naturally understood that Emoshio wanted her to make a stand. If one wanted to obtain benefits, then one naturally had to pay a price. After a short moment of silence, an elder of the Gu Wu clan spoke abruptly, "Patriarch, make a decision." The other elders of the Gu Wu clan nodded successively. Obviously, they'd come to an extremely tacit decision. A short moment later, the Gu Wu clan patriarch gazed at Wei Yang Tian, who stood by Yi Xian's side. "Come here." Wei Yang Tian shook her head and she just grabbed tightly onto Yi Xian. Even though she was young, she actually understood the current situation. Just like that, around a short moment later, the Gu Wu clan patriarch suddenly spoke in a low voice, "Don't harm that little girl. She's extremely useful to my Gu Wu clan." As soon as he finished speaking, a few elders of the Gu Wu clan suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. All of them were true Imperial Realm experts. Obviously, they'd already made their decision. Emoshio instantly started laughing when he heard the Gu Wu clan patriarch, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. "See that, Yi Xian? So long as my Realm Defense Alliance is willing, then any power in the firmament world is willing to become our ally." As he spoke, he gazed at the nearby Gu Wu clan patriarch. "Patriarch Gu, thank you for your trouble." The Gu clan patriarch glanced at Yi Xian. "Compared to the Firmament Sword Sect, I'm more willing to stand on the Realm Defense Alliance's side." As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly spoke softly, "Patriarch Gu, you have to consider it carefully." The Gu clan patriarch's expression gradually turned icy cold. "I've already considered it very clearly. Kill him." As soon as he finished speaking, over 10 formidable auras suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned, and then he turned around and bowed slightly towards the area outside the treehouse. "Senior, I'm right. A dead person is like an extinguished lamp. Your ring isn't of any use at all." As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, a woman in a red dress walked in slowly from outside the treehouse. P.S. During the new year, there's 3 updates every day. Hurry up and praise me. Quickly praise me. Praise me for being handsome. Chapter 300. In fact, the woman in red didn't want to come to the ancient Wu clan. However, Yi Xian had strongly urged her to stay because he was afraid that things would change. His worry was not wrong. After the woman in red appeared, the expressions of the ancient Wu clan members changed. Because there was a portrait on the wall of the treehouse, and this portrait was the appearance of the woman in red. The ancient Wu clan patriarch looked at the woman in red in horror. "You," the woman in red raised her hand and pressed down. Bang. A powerful pressure directly enveloped the ancient Wu clan patriarch, and in an instant the latter directly knelt down. In the treehouse, the expressions of the other ancient Wu clan elders changed greatly, and some of them were actually about to attack. At this moment, the ancient Wu clan patriarch suddenly said angrily, "Stop." Everyone looked at the ancient Wu clan patriarch, and the latter bowed deeply to the woman in red. "Greetings, ancestor." "Ancestor." In the treehouse, everyone was dumbstruck. Emoshio also had a look of disbelief on his face. The woman in red walked to the ancient Wu clan patriarch, and she looked down at the ancient Wu clan patriarch. "You are so blind, how did you become the patriarch of the ancient Wu clan?" The ancient Wu clan patriarch bowed his head slightly, and didn't dare to speak. The woman in red glanced at everyone in the treehouse. "Is a so-called treasure land so important? Does the ancient Wu clan need charity from others? Why, after so many years, has the ancient Wu clan become more and more spineless?" In the treehouse, no one else dared to answer. Emoshio suddenly said, "Your Excellency, my Realm Defense Alliance is not charity, At this moment, the woman in red suddenly waved her right hand. Bang. Emoshio, who was still speaking, was directly blasted away. 300 m away from the treehouse, Emoshio stared at the treehouse in horror, and his eyes were filled with fear. "Get lost." At this moment, the voice of the woman in red came from the treehouse. In his original place, Emoshio's expression fluctuated. Finally, he coldly glanced at the treehouse, then turned around and disappeared from where he stood. Within the treehouse, the woman in the red dress held Wei Yangtian's hand as she glanced coldly at the crowd. "From this moment onward, this girl is the clan leader of the Gu Wu clan. Do any of you have any objections?" The leader of the Gu Wu clan lowered his head slightly, not daring to speak. At this moment, an ancient Wu clan elder suddenly said, "Ancestor, there's something I don't understand. Why should we reject the goodwill of the Realm Defense Alliance?" The woman in the red dress pointed at Yi Xian. "Do you see him?" Yi Xian was stunned. "Does it have anything to do with me?" The elder glanced at Yi Xian. "What does the ancestor mean?" The woman in the red dress said indifferently, "Can't you see his potential?" The elder hesitated, then said, "He is indeed monstrous, but the Realm Defense Alliance is strong. It is more advantageous for us. Fool." The woman in the red dress suddenly said coldly, "Can't you look further? He is only 19 years old now, but he can already kill a true defensive realm expert. Give him another 10 years, no, give him another 5 years. In this world, besides some special old monsters who can be his match. If we give him another 10 years, no one in the firmament world can be his match." Hearing this, Yi Xian, who was standing next to him, was a little touched. "Sir, I didn't know that I was so outstanding in your heart. We had some misunderstandings before. Well, let's get to know each other again. My name is Yi Xian. How should I address you?" The woman in the red dress glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Scram. "Yi Xian." The woman in the red dress ignored Yi Xian, then looked at the Gu Wu clan leader who was still kneeling in front of her. "Temporary benefits, but long-term benefits? After me, to what extent has the Gu Wu clan declined?" The Gu Wu clan leader bowed his head even lower. "This junior is useless, I have shamed the ancestors." The woman in the red dress said coldly, "From now on, this girl is the Gu Wu clan leader. Help her well, and you will all benefit in the future." The Gu Wu clan leader quickly said, "Yes, ancestor." The woman in the red dress looked at Yi Xian. "Come with me." With that she walked outside. Wei Yangtian quickly pulled her back and the woman in the red dress smiled. "Come with me." With that she pulled Wei Yangtian out of the treehouse. Yi Xian hurried to follow him. In the treehouse, everyone looked at each other not knowing what they were thinking. Outside the treehouse, the woman in the red dress glanced at Yi Xian. She doesn't have any trusted followers in the Gu Wu clan, and her current strength is low. Even if she stays in the Gu Wu clan, she may be a mere figurehead and become a puppet. So she needs your help. Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, if I get involved, it will only make things more complicated. After all, I'm just an outsider." The woman in the red dress said indifferently, "What outsider? You have such a good relationship with this girl, comparable to blood brother and sister. It's only right and proper for you to help her. It's settled." With that, she looked up at the horizon. "It's time for me to leave as well." Yi Xian quickly asked, "Where are you going, senior?" The woman in the red dress said indifferently, "I'm going to settle the old scores. Also, be careful of the Realm Defense Alliance. They're not simple, so you're on your own." With that she disappeared on the spot. She left on the spot. Wei Yangtian looked up at the horizon and was about to bow and send her off when a voice suddenly came from the horizon. "There's no need to bow. It's enough that the thought is there." Hearing this, Wei Yangtian hesitated but still bowed. A low sigh resounded from afar. Yi Xian pulled Wei Yangtian back to the treehouse. At this moment, all the members of the Wu clan were present. Yi Xian smiled. "Patriarch Gu, to be honest, this little girl is a very good seedling. If all of you foster her well, then your Wu clan will definitely prosper in the future." Patriarch Gu glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian looked at Wei Yangtian, and the latter had a nervous expression. Yi Xian smiled. "Don't be nervous. I'll be staying here for a few days." A wisp of a smile instantly arose on Wei Yangtian's face when he heard this. In the following period of time, Yi Xian stayed at the Wu clan. Besides accompanying Wei Yangtian every single day, he had another mission, and it was to search for Dao laws. Since the god on the second floor had sensed the aura of a Dao law here, then it proved that there was definitely a Dao law here. Unfortunately, he hadn't found a single strand of it after searching for a few days. During this period, Yi Xian had been paying attention to the Wu clan's attitude towards Wei Yangtian. He noticed that the Wu clan was very respectful towards Wei Yangtian because the talent she displayed was truly too terrifying. Now the entire Wu clan treated her like a treasure. Another 2 days passed, but Yi Xian still hadn't found the Dao law, and the god on the second floor hadn't sensed the aura of a Dao law as well. Yi Xian was about to continue his search, but at this moment, the voice transmission stone on him vibrated. It was from Nangong. Something had happened to Shang Yu. Nangong had sent news that there was no news from Shang Yu on the 4th day after he entered the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Upon receiving this news, Yi Xian immediately went to look for Wei Yangtian. "You're leaving?" Wei Yangtian grabbed Yi Xian's arm tightly. Yi Xian nodded. "Something happened to Big Brother's friend. Big Brother has to go take a look." Wei Yangtian lowered her head slightly. Yi Xian was about to speak when Wei Yangtian suddenly let go and said softly, "Big Brother, be careful." Yi Xian rubbed Wei Yangtian's little head and smiled. He rubbed Wei Yangtian's little head and said with a smile, "Cultivate well here. If you have any problems, send me a voice transmission anytime." Wei Yangtian smiled. "All right." Yi Xian nodded and didn't say anything else. He turned around and vanished on his sword. Wei Yangtian looked at the sky and didn't leave for a long time. If a person was helped in their most difficult time, it would be remembered for a lifetime. After Yi Xian left the Wu clan, he headed straight for the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Meanwhile, Nangong was rushing to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range as well. On the way, Yi Xian's expression was rather solemn. At this moment he realized that if the Realm Defense Alliance was willing to make friends with these powers and gave them a certain amount of compensation, these powers basically wouldn't refuse. Just like the Wu clan. If it wasn't for the woman in red, the Wu clan would have sided with the Realm Defense Alliance. Because the overall strength of the Realm Defense Alliance was much stronger than the Pale Sword sect. Now that something had happened to Shang Yu, the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain range had probably chosen a side. When he thought up to this point, Yi Xian immediately notified the sect. However, he received no response. Even so, Yi Xian still rushed to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Actually, the 10,000 Beast Mountain range was separated from humans by the demon race. As for the true strength of the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, it had always been a mystery just like the Mystic Gate. A day later Yi Xian arrived at the 10,000 Beast Mountain range on his sword. The entire mountain range stretched for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and the mountains stretched as far as the eye could see. When he entered the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, Yi Xian saw many warnings, and all of them stated that humans were prohibited from entering. Obviously, this 10,000 Beast Mountain range was not very friendly to humans. Yi Xian sped up and soon arrived at the depths of the mountain range. When he arrived at the entrance of a canyon, a tall middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. Law-controlling realm expert. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian cupped his fists. Pale Sword Sect Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Hearing Yi Xian's name, the middle-aged man's eyes narrowed. You're that Yi Xian that the Realm Defense Alliance has issued a warrant for. Yi Xian nodded. The middle-aged man said lightly, What are you doing in my 10,000 Beast Mountain range? Yi Xian said, A few days ago, a disciple of my Pale Sword Sect came to pay a visit to the Beast King, but he still hasn't left the mountain range and there's no news of him. I came here to look for him. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian. He spoke rudely and has been imprisoned by the Beast King. If your Pale Sword Sect wants him, then pay 10 billion top-grade spirit stones to ransom him. Yi Xian's face instantly fell when he heard this. Obviously, the 10,000 Beast Mountain range had chosen to stand on the side of the Realm Defense Alliance. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I understand. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Suddenly, the middle-aged man said, Stop right there. Yi Xian stopped moving. The middle-aged man spoke coldly, Do you think this is your Pale Sword Sect? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Yi Xian said with a smile, Sir, do you want me to stay here too? The middle-aged man smiled, You're right. Will you stay obediently or should I? Right at this moment Yi Xian turned around and swung his sword. The middle-aged man's head flew into the air before he could even react. How dare you? Right at this moment, a furious shout suddenly resounded from the gorge in the distance, and then strands of terrifying pressure suddenly smashed down from the sky. Yi Xian turned around and fled. Chapter 301. After Yi Xian entered a dense forest, his presence disappeared without a trace, as if he had never existed. Not long after Yi Xian disappeared, a bearded man appeared where Yi Xian had been standing. Looking at the corpse on the ground, the bearded man's face darkened. He glanced coldly at the surroundings. Damned human. As soon as his voice fell, he stomped his right foot. Boom. The earth shook violently as if there was an earthquake. Yi Xian did not leave the Thousand Beast Mountain range but continued to go deeper in. But the him now was not going in openly but sneaking in. With the chaotic chi, even a true Imperial Law State practitioner would not be able to detect him. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian came to the depths of the Thousand Beast Mountain range, and in the depths of this vast mountain range there was a city. Thousand Beast City. The city was huge, even bigger than Sky Cloud City. It should be said that this city was the biggest city in the Azure Firmament world. Just the city walls alone were a good few 100 feet high. Standing under the city walls, a person would be as tiny as an ant. But this was normal because this city was not for humans but for demonic beasts. Yi Xian sneaked into the city. There were very few buildings in the city and it was very spacious. In this city he saw all kinds of demonic beasts, some of them in human form and some of them still in their original forms. Secretly, Yi Xian was in a dilemma. This city was so huge, if he were to search like this, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Sound transmission stone. Yi Xian thought of the sound transmission stone, but very quickly he rejected the idea. The demon race would not be so stupid. Since they had imprisoned Shang Yu, they would definitely search him for his belongings. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian thought about it and then went out of the city. In the next moment, a sword suddenly slashed on the walls of the Thousand Beast City. Boom. A corner of the city wall cracked, and the entire Thousand Beast City was shocked. Enemy attack? Countless demonic beasts rushed up the city wall. At the foot of the city walls, Yi Xian stood quietly, the long sword in his hand pointed diagonally at the ground. I am the Blue Sword Sect's Yi Xian. I have come here today to seek some guidance from the younger generation of the Thousand Beast City. Under the augmentation of his celestial chi, his voice boomed out like thunder, and half of the Thousand Beast City heard it. Challenging the younger generation of the Thousand Beast City. On the city wall, countless demonic beasts roared in unison. Soon, a demonic beast charged towards Yi Xian. Below, Yi Xian was expressionless as he raised his sword and slashed down. Boom. Before the demonic beast could even get close to Yi Xian, it was directly blasted away by the force of Yi Xian's sword strike. Outside the city walls, Yi Xian said coldly, "Too weak. Show me something powerful." On the city walls, another demonic beast charged down. But just like before the demonic beast could even get close to Yi Xian, it was blasted away by the force of Yi Xian's sword strike. Just like that, after more than 10 demonic beasts were blasted away, the demonic beasts on the city walls did not come down anymore. Before the city gates, Yi Xian was expressionless. Why are there no more demonic beasts in the Thousand Beast Mountain range? Right at this moment, the ground suddenly trembled. In next to no time, a violent lion that emanated a dark glow suddenly charged out from within the city. This violent lion was enormous like a hill, and every single time it ran, the ground would tremble violently. When it was still several dozen feet away from Yi Xian, the ground around Yi Xian began to crack inch by inch. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he charged forward, and slashed down with his sword. Boom! Under the gazes of countless people, the wild lion retreated rapidly, and this retreat was no less than 200 feet. And when it stopped, its entire head split open and blood gushed out like a fountain. This lion was at least at the Dharma-controlling realm, and the strength of its physique was imaginable. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's sword was even sharper. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. The lion stared at Yi Xian, its eyes filled with ferocity. It was about to attack again when a voice suddenly rang out from the city, "Stand down." As the voice fell, a burly man with a curly beard appeared in front of Yi Xian. Dharma-controlling realm. The burly man looked coldly at Yi Xian. "You are Yi Xian." Yi Xian said indifferently, "That's me." The burly man said coldly, "You want to challenge my demon race?" Yi Xian grinned, "Can't I?" The curly-bearded man nodded, "Yes, of course you can. Since you want a challenge, then my monster race will play with you. Let my monster race see just how strong someone who can make the Realm Defense Alliance suffer a loss is." As his voice fell, he had already appeared on the city wall, and at this moment, a shadow suddenly shot out from the city. The speed of this afterimage was extremely fast. Everywhere it passed, the air would simply rupture, and even space itself would tremble. That was pure physical strength. Yi Xian did not underestimate his opponent. He took a step forward, and stabbed down with his sword. One sword to decide life and death. This sword was also imbued with the evil will sword intent. At this moment, a fist landed on the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Boom! An explosion sounded like a clap of thunder. Then the two figures retreated rapidly. Yi Xian retreated a full 30 feet, and 60 feet in front of him stood a man. This man was burly and his muscles were bulging, filled with explosive strength. The man glanced coldly at Yi Xian, and in the next moment he stomped his right foot on the ground. The ground beneath Yi Xian's feet instantly cracked, and a wave of energy rushed towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian stabbed his sword into the ground. Boom! Beneath the ground, that wave of energy shattered, and countless gravel flew in all directions. At this time, the man had already appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he punched directly at Yi Xian's head. This punch caused the space in its path to distort. Yi Xian frowned, and in the next moment he dodged to the side, and at the same time he twisted his wrist, and the sword in his hand slashed directly at the man's abdomen. Bang! With this slash, Yi Xian felt as if his sword had struck a piece of dark iron, and his entire arm went violently numb. Shit! Yi Xian was shocked in his heart. He tapped his right foot lightly on the ground and his figure floated backwards. Unfortunately, it was still slightly too late, and the man's fist had already smashed against his chest. Bang! Yi Xian's body arched as he flew over 100 m away. Yi Xian had just stopped when the man suddenly leaped up and arrived above Yi Xian's head, and then he smashed his fist down. It wasn't a martial technique and it was just pure physical strength. A wisp of a savage smile arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth, and then he stomped his right foot on the ground and vanished. 30 kill. Bang! Along with the sound of an explosion, the man's figure retreated to the spot he stood on, and there was a sword stuck in his fist. The man had just stopped when a sword suddenly slashed out from the sword chest on Yi Xian's back. The sword was like a bolt of lightning. No, it was even faster than lightning. The man hadn't even reacted when the sword pierced through his shoulder, and the formidable force contained within the sword caused the man to retreat explosively over and over again until he reached the side of a wall. "I've lost." The curly-bearded man's face instantly sank when he witnessed this scene. Below the wall, Yi Xian gestured with his right hand, and the two swords flew back to him. He raised his head to look at the curly-bearded man and said, "Next. Take the next one." After a moment of silence, countless demon beasts roared furiously from above the wall. These demon beasts glared angrily at Yi Xian, and all of them revealed ferocious gazes as if they intended to swallow him up. However, no demon beast descended, nor did they besiege him. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. In the demon race, the strong were respected, and a one-on-one battle was a one-on-one battle. The curly-bearded man stared coldly at Yi Xian and said, "As you said." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and looked towards the depths of the city. "Come out." As soon as the curly-bearded man's voice resounded, a figure suddenly shot into the sky from within the city. In the next moment, this figure shot explosively towards Yi Xian. Its speed was so swift that it was comparable to Yi Xian's flying sword from before. Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and then a strand of formidable sword aura swept out from within him. The Sword Emperor's aura. This Sword Emperor's aura surged completely into the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Moreover, the sword in his hand had practically instantly turned pitch black. Evil sword intent. Yi Xian stabbed upwards from below. Boom. A sword howl resounded through the sky. Meanwhile, a fist smashed onto the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Bang. The ground beneath Yi Xian's feet collapsed, and the sword in Yi Xian's hand actually started to bend. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly flew out from behind Yi Xian. The man's expression changed drastically in midair, and he hurriedly withdrew his fist before pressing his palms together. This action actually forcefully stopped Yi Xian's sword. But right at this moment, a sword suddenly stabbed into the man's chest. It wasn't deep and it was only around half an inch deep. Void flash. The surroundings quietened down. On the city wall, the curly-bearded man's expression was extremely gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. Below, the man above Yi Xian's head had retreated over 30 m away, and then Yi Xian waved his right hand, causing the two swords to fly back to him. The man glanced at Yi Xian. "Your sword is very fast." Yi Xian said, "Your strength is very strong." Physical strength. This man's physical strength was truly formidable. Needless to say, he couldn't underestimate anyone in the world. Even though he already had the ability to kill true Imperial Magic Realm experts, the firmament world was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Amongst the younger generation, there were many who could similarly kill true Imperial Magic Realm experts. There was always someone stronger in the world. The man glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything else. He bowed deeply to the curly-bearded man on the city wall. "I'm sorry." The curly-bearded man was expressionless. "You should be sorry to yourself." The man fell silent. The curly-bearded man waved his hand. "From today onwards, your cultivation will be doubled." The man smiled bitterly. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. However, after a few steps he stopped again and glanced at Yi Xian. "My name is Zhang Yuan. In the future, I will personally go to the Firmament Sword sect to challenge you." After he finished speaking, he entered the city. Outside the city wall, Yi Xian looked up at the curly-bearded man. "Is there anyone else?" The curly-bearded man stared at Yi Xian. "What exactly do you want to do?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Previously, a disciple of my Firmament Sword sect came to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, but now there's no news of him. I believe that your demon race must know his whereabouts, right?" The curly-bearded man stared at Yi Xian coldly. "What if I say I don't know?" Yi Xian grinned. He pointed his sword at the curly-bearded man. "Come on, continue to call people out. Don't tell me that your demon race has no one in the younger generation." The curly-bearded man stared at Yi Xian. "I think you want to die." Yi Xian smiled. "Even the Realm Defense Alliance doesn't dare to kill me personally. Do your demon race dare?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" At this moment in the distant city, a voice suddenly sounded. Then a giant hand suddenly stretched out from the space above Yi Xian's head. The next moment, this giant hand directly fell towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and was about to summon the prison pagoda, but at this moment, end of this chapter. Chapter 302. A middle-aged man suddenly appeared before Yi Xian. The middle-aged man looked to be in his 30s, dressed in a gray robe, with a long sword sheathed at his waist. His left hand was behind his back, and his right hand was placed before his chest, holding a black stone in his hand. The middle-aged man glanced at the giant hand above his head, and in the next moment, the sword at his waist suddenly flew out. The skies. With a tearing sound, the giant hand above Yi Xian's head was split into two. So powerful. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. This man's sword might be the strongest he had seen so far, besides the mysterious woman. Although the man had only struck once, but that one strike had given him a feeling. Powerful. Very powerful. The middle-aged man glanced at the thousand-beast city. When the younger generation can't win, the old ones step in. Don't you think it's embarrassing? As his voice fell, the middle-aged man's left hand pointed lightly. Swoosh. The sword at his waist suddenly flew out, extremely fast, and in an instant, it struck the thousand-beast city's walls not far away. The sword fell, and the hundreds of feet tall city wall was slashed to the bottom by the sword, leaving a huge gap in the wall. Insolence. An angry roar suddenly rang out from within the thousand-beast city. Very soon, a figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the city, and in the next moment, an old man appeared before the middle-aged man. It was an old man. The old man had a pair of long black horns on his head. The old man was about to strike when the middle-aged man suddenly said, "Go back." As his voice fell, his left hand's fingers drew a line in front of him. The sword struck. In the distance, the old man's face changed and he threw out a punch. Boom. In the air, the space shook violently, and the old man flew out, flying straight back into the thousand-beast city. The middle-aged man looked coldly at the thousand-beast city. A bunch of trash, the young won't do, the old won't do. As his voice fell, he suddenly pointed his fingers forward. Boom. In the distance, the gates of the thousand-beast city crumbled. At that moment, countless powerful exponents suddenly shot up from various parts of the thousand-beast mountain range, and rushed towards the thousand-beast mountain range. All of them were true Imperial Law Realm exponents. In the air, the middle-aged man looked around coldly. Demon Clan, any demons come out to fight? Allow me. Right at this moment, a furious shout suddenly resounded from the north, and then a 300m long WRM flashed through the sky and smashed directly towards the middle-aged man. His powerful physical strength caused the space in his path to distort. The momentum was terrifying. The middle-aged man took a step forward and placed the fingers of his left hand between his eyebrows. A sword quietly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, the sword flew out like a bolt of lightning. As the sword flew out, it grew larger and larger. When it arrived in front of the flood dragon, it was already 1,000 feet long. The middle-aged man suddenly pointed his finger forward. Kill. Boom. In the distance, the flood dragon's body was directly split into two by the sword, and blood poured down from the sky like a waterfall. The air suddenly became quiet. After a moment of silence, over a dozen powerful auras appeared around Yi Xian and the middle-aged man. The weakest was at the true defensive Dharma realm. The middle-aged man was expressionless. The sword in the distance flew back to him and floated there quietly. The middle-aged man swept his eyes around. The older generation of the monster race is just like this? Impudent. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly came from behind the middle-aged man, and at this moment, from the thousand-beast city in the distance, a voice suddenly rang out. Stop. The voice was like a great bell, deafening. Below, Yi Xian trembled and his head felt dizzy. He quickly displayed his sword, intent to protect himself. The middle-aged man looked into the distant city. Inside the city, a middle-aged man in a white robe suddenly walked out. The white-robed middle-aged man smiled slightly. Jian Xian, long time no see. Jian Xian. Hearing these two words, the faces of the surrounding monster race experts changed. Practically all the experts of the older generation knew of these two words. Because these two words had shaken the entire firmament world all those years ago. Jian Xian. That year, the first in the Azure world's martial role, the only time the Celestial Sect did not get the first place was because of this person. In that era, even the peerless genius of the Celestial Sect was suppressed by Jian Xian of the Azure Sword Sect. And Jian Xian was also the person that the Realm Defense Alliance feared the most. In the air, Jian Xian looked coldly at the white-robed middle-aged man. Beast King, let's exchange a few moves? The Beast King shook his head and smiled. If you and I fight without 10 days and 10 nights, we won't be able to determine the winner. There's no point in fighting. Jian Xian said softly, then let him go. The Beast King smiled. Jian Xian, be honest, does your Azure Sword Sect really want to fight to the death with the Realm Defense Alliance? Jian Xian was expressionless. It's the Realm Defense Alliance that cannot tolerate my Azure Sword Sect, isn't it? The Beast King shook his head and pointed to Yi Xian not far away. The one that the Realm Defense Alliance is really afraid of is this person. If your Azure Sword Sect hands him over, won't this matter be over? At least for the time being. Isn't that right? Below, Yi Xian faced the Beast King. Senior, can I say a few words? The Beast King looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, of course, why not? Yi Xian smiled and said, if the Realm Defense Alliance has taken a liking to Senior's wife, in order not to anger the Realm Defense Alliance, wouldn't you have to offer your wife to the Realm Defense Alliance with both hands? The Beast King's eyes narrowed and his right hand slowly clenched. At this time Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Senior Beast King, do you know about dignity and backbone? If we live without dignity and backbone, wouldn't we be worse than a dog? In the air, Jian Shen glanced at Yi Xian and did not say a word. The Beast King laughed lightly. You do have a backbone to dare to challenge my Thousand Beast City alone, but do you really understand the Realm Defense Alliance? When your Azure Sword sect was at its peak, when your Azure Sword Master was still around, you were not able to destroy the Realm Defense Alliance. What more now? Yi Xian suddenly said, there's nothing in this world that is difficult for those who set their minds to it. As long as I, Yi Xian, do not die sooner or later, I will wipe out the Realm Defense Alliance. To Yi Xian, he and the Realm Defense Alliance were irreconcilable enemies. It did not matter if he could wipe out the Realm Defense Alliance, but he must show it. Anyway, there was nothing to lose even if he boasted. The Beast King gave a thumbs up to Yi Xian. You're amazing, very amazing. Let me wait and see. As he said that, he glanced at Jian Shen and said with a smile, since you've come out personally, this face must be given. Release him. Following the Beast King's order, Shang Yu was quickly brought out. However, when they saw Shang Yu, Yi Xian and Jian Shen's faces immediately darkened. Because at this moment Shang Yu's aura was weak. Not only was his aura weak, his dantian was shattered and both his arms were severed. Seeing this scene, Jian Shen turned to look at the Beast King. The Beast King smiled and said, if you want this Yi Xian beside you to stay behind and end up like him, then feel free to make your move. Jian Shen's face was terrifyingly cold, but the Beast King just laughed and turned to leave. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly said, do it. Hearing that, the Beast King stopped in his tracks. Everyone turned to look at Yi Xian, including Jian Shen, who was also looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's right hand gripped the sword in his hand tightly. Eldest uncle, do it. As for me, don't worry. Even the Realm Defense Alliance cannot kill me, what more a demon? Jian Shen looked at Yi Xian. You have the ability to protect yourself? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Jian Shen nodded slightly. He turned to look at the Beast King not far away. You crippled one of my Pale Sword sect's younger generation. I will kill 100 of your demons' younger generation. No, I will wipe out the entire younger generation of your demon race. As his voice fell, he turned into a flash of sword light and rushed into the Thousand Beast City. Seeing this scene, the Beast King's face changed. Insolent. As his voice fell, he rushed towards Jian Shen. But Jian Shen did not fight him. His target was the younger generation of the demon race. At this moment, the Beast King was a little flustered. He seemed to have thought of something and he suddenly roared, get rid of that Yi Xian. Soon, more than 10 powerful auras from all directions rushed towards Yi Xian. In his original position, Yi Xian was expressionless, not moving nor escaping. P.S. To be honest, during the New Year period, there are not many people who can maintain 3 chapters. For someone so hard-working like me, don't you have anything to say? Just a little something will do. Chapter 303. Yi Xian stood there quietly. Second floor God, are you going to make a move or not? No. You're really not coming out. I'm not. Fine, we break off our friendship. Break off our friendship then. Unable to get the second floor God to help, Yi Xian had no choice but to take out the prison pagoda. Just as he was about to activate the prison pagoda, the second floor God suddenly said angrily, don't activate it. Yi Xian said angrily, if you don't activate it, are you waiting for death? That's right, don't activate it. I'm going to die. You can't activate it even if you die. I don't care. No. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, a voice that Yi Xian had never heard before resounded in the prison pagoda, let him activate it. Hearing this voice, Yi Xian was stunned. Who the hell was this? Which floor was it from? Yi Xian did not have time to think so much, because the pressure from the surrounding experts had arrived. Just as he was about to activate the prison pagoda, his body suddenly stiffened. At the same time he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were blue. Possessed. At this moment Yi Xian felt that he was no longer in control of his body, but he could clearly feel everything, including the second floor God. At this moment the second floor God was very angry. Very angry. Yi Xian coldly glanced around. The next moment he suddenly stretched out his right hand and pressed down lightly. Boom. The entire sky suddenly shook violently. The next moment, the aura of the demon experts disappeared without a trace. Yi Xian coldly glanced around. At this moment, from the north, a huge fist flew across the sky, heading straight for him. Yi Xian bent his right hand into a claw and grabbed the air. Boom! The gigantic fist shattered with a loud bang. Then Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, a heart-wrenching scream resounded from the horizon. A great demon slowly fell from the sky, and Yi Xian actually opened his mouth and ate it. Within his body, Yi Xian's main body vomited. Guru on the second floor, don't King eat that. Use your main body to eat it. Damn, I'm so disgusted. Hurry up and stop. Although it was the Almighty on the second floor who was eating, it was his body. He could clearly feel that feeling. He was King eating them alive. The great god on the second floor didn't even bother about Yi Xian. In just a short while, a true tier great demon was eaten alive. At this moment, all the demon clan experts were dumbfounded. When did Yi Xian become so powerful? In the distance, the Beast King in the city also noticed this scene. He looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. How is this possible? At that moment, within the Thousand Beast City, screams and wails rang out incessantly. Hearing this, the Beast King's face changed. He roared in anger. Jian Xian. As his voice fell, he rushed towards the city. At this moment, Jian Xian was in the city slaughtering the younger generation of the demon clan. Not a single one was spared. On the other side, Yi Xian did not stop after eating the great demon alive. Instead, he looked around coldly. Low-level demon beasts. As his voice fell, he rushed towards the right. His speed was extremely fast. It was as if he had teleported thousands of feet away. When he arrived in front of one of the great demons, the latter didn't even have time to react and was sent flying by his claw. Just as Yi Xian was about to continue attacking, the prison pagoda suddenly shook violently. Yi Xian stopped. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. The great god on the second floor had returned to the pagoda. What's going on? Yi Xian hurriedly asked. The prison pagoda just now had made him a little flustered. After a moment of silence, the great god on the second floor suddenly said angrily, "You idiot!" Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "Can't you speak properly?" The great god on the second floor said angrily, "The seal is about to be lifted." Yi Xian was stunned. Then he hurriedly asked, "Which floor?" "All of them." The great god on the second floor almost roared. "All of them." Yi Xian froze in the air. This prison pagoda had a total of 9 floors. Now only 3 were open. That meant there were 6 more. If all 6 layers of the seal were loosened, then those fellows inside would all come out. Yi Xian didn't dare to think about it. Because those imprisoned here were basically not good people, including this great god on the second floor. None of them were good people. In the past, there was the mysterious woman to suppress them. Now who would suppress them? Yi Xian hesitated. Then he said, "Why don't we throw the pagoda away?" The great god on the second floor said coldly, "Can you throw it away?" Yi Xian realized that he really couldn't throw it away. This prison pagoda was almost one with him now. Wait for that woman to come back. The great god on the second floor suddenly said. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Can we find the Tao Law?" "No." The great god on the second floor said coldly, "You have activated this pagoda time and time again. This pagoda is already seriously injured. Now that it is injured, the importance of the Tao Law has become extremely small. If she doesn't come back in half a year, you can wait for death. Wait for death, wait for death, wait for death, wait for death, wait for death." Yi Xian hesitated. Then he said, "Great god on the second floor, isn't it good for you to lift the seal?" The second floor was silent. Yi Xian was about to ask. At this time, the great god on the second floor suddenly said angrily, "None of your business." Actually, Yi Xian didn't know what the great god on the second floor was afraid of. She wasn't afraid of this pagoda, nor afraid of those imprisoned in the pagoda. She was afraid of that mysterious woman. She was the first one to wake up and the only one who had a lot of contact with the mysterious woman. She knew more than Yi Xian how terrifying the mysterious woman was. She was also more aware of Yi Xian's position in the mysterious woman's heart. Those imprisoned in the pagoda didn't know that if anything happened to Yi Xian, that woman would go crazy. And once that woman went crazy, not only would all the imprisoned in the pagoda be finished, even the whole world would be finished. Moreover, most importantly, the mysterious woman had done her a favor. This was also the reason why she didn't like Yi Xian but still wanted to attack him. Yi Xian also knew that the great god on the second floor didn't like him, so he immediately asked, "Great god on the second floor, is there some misunderstanding between us? I think I'm quite a good person. Why don't you like me?" The great god on the second floor said coldly, "Think about it yourself." Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "Think about it, my ass." Ignoring the great god on the second floor, Yi Xian collected his thoughts. At this moment, there were still many great demons of the demon race looking at him. Obviously, those great demons didn't know that the great god on the second floor had returned to the pagoda. In the air, Yi Xian put his hands behind his back, his face expressionless. "Demon race, are there any great demons who want to fight with me?" The demon race experts around him had a look of fear on their faces. No one dared to make a move. Just now, Yi Xian had killed a great demon of the true Imperial Dharma realm in a second. That was an instant kill and he had eaten it alive. Towards the current Yi Xian, no one was not afraid. In the air, Yi Xian suddenly shouted angrily, "Why is there no one from the demon race? No one actually wants to fight with me?" At this moment, the curly-bearded burly man on the city wall appeared in front of Yi Xian. This person was also a demon king of the demon race, and his strength was also at the true Imperial Dharma realm. The curly-bearded burly man stared at Yi Xian. "You are not Yi Xian." Yi Xian was expressionless. "Then who am I?" The curly-bearded burly man looked at Yi Xian for a long time and finally, his right hand slowly clenched. Seeing that the curly-bearded burly man was about to make a move, Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly, and he quickly said, "Fine, since you want to chat, then I will chat with you." The main body. Hearing this, the curly-bearded burly man frowned. "You really aren't Yi Xian." Yi Xian said, "Then do you know who I am?" The curly-bearded burly man glanced at Yi Xian. "Who the hell are you?" Yi Xian smiled, and as if he thought of something, he quickly asked in his heart, "Great God on the second floor, how do I address you?" The second floor was silent. Yi Xian shook his head, and just as he was about to bluff, the second floor suddenly said, "The Lord of the Illusory Demon Realm, Illusory Raccoon." Illusory Demon Realm? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he turned to the curly-bearded burly man not far away. "This lord is the Lord of the Illusory Demon Realm." Illusory Demon Realm? The curly-bearded burly man frowned deeply. "Never heard of it." As he said that, his expression suddenly changed. "You are not from the green firmament world." Yi Xian was just about to say something, and at that moment, the cry of a sword suddenly sounded from the Thousand Beast City in the distance. Very quickly, a city wall was cut down by a sword, and it began to crumble inch by inch. The curly-bearded burly man suddenly turned his head, his hands clenched tightly, but he did not dare to make a move. A battle of that level was not something he could participate in. At that moment, within the Thousand Beast City, countless sword lights flashed, and everywhere the sword lights passed, it turned into ruins. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelid twitched. Was the city going to be destroyed? Inside the city, a roar suddenly sounded, and very soon, a destructive power suddenly shot up from the city, straight towards Jian Xian. In the sky, Jian Xian was expressionless, his left hand pointed downwards. Swoosh! A ray of sword light slashed down, and the power was instantly shattered. But Jian Xian did not stop, his left hand slashed diagonally to the right, and a ray of sword light cut across the sky. Swoosh! One side of the city wall was instantly split open, and within the city, countless screams rang out. So powerful. Yi Xian was extremely excited. This eldest uncle's battle prowess was terrifying. In the sky above the Thousand Beast City, Jian Xian stood quietly, his left hand pointed, and at the tip of his finger there was a ray of sword light. Not far from him was the Beast King. At that moment, the Beast King's face was extremely ugly. Extremely ugly. The younger generation of the Thousand Beast City had been almost completely slaughtered. If such a powerful exponent targeted the younger generation, there was no way to stop it, and the person in front of him was not just any ordinary exponent. In the Green Heavens world, there was an unwritten rule that the older generation could not target the younger generation. At that moment, the Beast King was feeling a little regretting listening to the Realm Defense Alliance and crippling Shangyu. But he really did not think that Jian Xian would come out. And Jian Xian obviously had no intention of stopping. He glanced at Yi Xian not far away, seeing that Yi Xian was unharmed, he then turned to look at the Beast King not far away. "Today I will destroy your Thousand Beast City." As his voice fell, he was about to strike, but at that moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from Jian Xian. The man was the Realm Defense Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu. Chapter 304. Realm Guard Alliance Supreme Lord Lu. Supreme Lord Lu glanced at Jian Xian and said, "Jian Xian, I never thought that you would come back after disappearing for so many years. Are you here to be buried with the Pale Sword Sect? Jian Xian glanced at Supreme Lord Lu. Destroy my Pale Sword Sect? Your Realm Guard Alliance? Old Man Lu, there is still the corpse of the previous Supreme Lord hanging at the foot of my Pale Sword Sect's mountain. But don't worry, sooner or later your corpse will also be hanging there. Supreme Lord Lu was not angry. Is that so? Then let's wait and see. Let's see whether my corpse will be hanging at the foot of your Pale Sword Sect's mountain, or the bodies of everyone in your Pale Sword Sect will be hanging at the foot of my Realm Guard mountain. Jian Xian sheathed his sword. Then let's wait and see. After saying that, he grabbed the unconscious Shang Yu and looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded and seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the Beast King not far away. Beast King, for the sake of the Realm Guard Alliance, your demon race's younger generation has almost died, and even half of the city has been destroyed. Let me ask you, did you suffer a loss? Ah. After saying that, he turned and flew into the sky on his sword. Soon Yi Xian and Jian Xian disappeared into the horizon. In the sky above the Thousand Beast City, the Beast King's face was gloomy and grim. Loss. This time it was a loss and a loss of blood. At this moment, Supreme Lord Lu suddenly said, Beast King, in the future when the Pale Sword Sect is destroyed, a third of their assets will belong to your demon race. Hearing this, the Beast King's face eased a little as he looked at Supreme Lord Lu. When will you make your move? Supreme Lord Lu smiled. Soon. Once the matter in Green State is over, we will make our move immediately. The Beast King asked in a low voice, How confident are you? Supreme Lord Lu's mouth curled up, 70 to 80%. The Beast King thought for a moment and said, Jian Xian and Yi Xian aren't simple at all. Especially that young man Yi Xian. He's extremely mysterious. Lord Lu said softly, Don't worry, his confidence comes from that mysterious woman. As for that mysterious woman, someone will deal with her in the future. The Beast King nodded and did not say anything more. He glanced down at the Thousand Beast City below and his face darkened once again. This time, the demons had suffered a great loss. When they were about 10 miles away from the Tsang Sword Sect, Jian Xian suddenly stopped and handed Shang Yu to Yi Xian. Take him back. Yi Xian was stunned. Eldest martial uncle, you're not going back? Jian Xian glanced in the direction of Azure Sword Sect and shook his head. I don't want to go back. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. If there's nothing else, try not to leave the sect. With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders and brought Shang Yu back to Azure Sword Sect. In the Azure Sword Hall, Qin Beihan looked at Shang Yu for a long time. In the end, he looked at the old man beside him. Is there a way to cure him? The old man walked up to Shang Yu and looked at him carefully before he nodded. His dantian is broken and he needs spiritual items to recover. The price is not small. Qin Beihan nodded. Cure him at all costs. The old man nodded. Understood. With that, he left the hall with Shang Yu. Qin Beihan looked at Yi Xian. What are your thoughts on this trip? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Our Azure Sword Sect is in a bad situation. Qin Beihan smiled. Anything else? Yi Xian shook his head. Nothing else. He turned to Qin Beihan. Sovereign, forgive me for being blunt. Based on the current situation, our Azure Sword Sect has no chance of winning, especially those forces in the Azure Firmament world. Most of them will stand on the Realm Protection Alliance's side. As for us, we have no hope. Qin Beihan smiled. You still haven't looked far enough. Yi Xian said, Sovereign, please enlighten us. Qin Beihan smiled. In the Azure Firmament world, on the surface, the Realm Protection Alliance is the strongest. But below that, there are other strong forces. These forces have deep foundations that even the Realm Protection Alliance fears. For example, the Profound Gate. Yi Xian said in a low voice. They will deal with the Realm Protection Alliance? Qin Beihan smiled. They won't deal with the Realm Defense Alliance, but what the Realm Defense Alliance wants to do will seriously affect their interests. Yi Xian asked. Sovereign, do you know what the Realm Protection Alliance wants to do? Qin Beihan nodded. Do you really think that people like us eat rice for free every day? The Realm Protection Alliance's ambition is not small. He looked at Yi Xian. You need to make a trip back to Azure Province. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Qin Beihan spoke softly. Even though I don't know what their final objective is to stop the Realm Protection Alliance from obtaining the Origin Heart, it's obvious that everything they're doing is for the sake of the Origin Heart. Presently, the territory of Azure Prefecture is in utter chaos, and blood is flowing everywhere. The Origin Heart should be emerging soon, so you have to obtain it first. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Sect Master, I think that you'll have a better chance if you head there yourself. Qin Beihan shook his head. The Realm Protection Alliance will find out at the first possible moment if we leave the Firmament Sword Sect. At that time, the Firmament Sword Sect will probably cease to exist by the time we return. As for you, the Realm Protection Alliance won't be able to notice you at all if you sneak out, right? As he spoke, a spurious smile arose on the corners of his mouth. Obviously, Yi Xian's ability to conceal his aura hadn't been able to fool Qin Beihan. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'll head back. He had been in the Divine Central Continent for some time, and it was indeed time for him to go back and take a look. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian said, Sect Master, I've seen my eldest martial uncle. Qin Beihan said softly, I know. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then chuckled. Sect Master, did my eldest martial uncle have a melodramatic fight with you over the position of Sect Master? Qin Beihan glanced at Yi Xian and shook his head. It's not what you think. Your eldest martial uncle, this isn't something you should worry about. Previously, I was afraid that the Realm Protection Alliance would target your relatives in Qingzhou, so I sent junior brother Zhang Xian to Qingzhou to discuss things with him. He isn't someone who holds grudges. Yi Xian's heart warmed when he heard this. He nodded. I understand. With that, he bowed slightly and left the hall. Yi Xian didn't return directly to Qingzhou, but made a meal. Inside Cloud's Word Hall, Yi Xian put a piece of lean meat in Yu Qi's bowl and grinned. Master, this is delicious. Yu Qi glanced at Yi Xian. This time, you went to save Shangyu, and dared to challenge the younger generation of the demon race in Thousand Beast City alone. The senior brothers are very satisfied with you. When you return, there will be a reward. Reward? Yi Xian hurriedly asked. What reward? Yu Qi shook his head. I don't know, but it shouldn't be too bad. She paused for a moment, then continued, Did you meet your eldest martial uncle? Yi Xian nodded. I did. Master, does eldest martial uncle have a grudge with the sect master? Yu Qi shook his head slightly. This matter is rather complicated. He should have been the sect master back then, but unfortunately, forget it, there's no point in telling you these things. Yi Xian. Moments later, after Yu Qi finished her meal, she flicked her finger and a ray of sword light suddenly entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. This sword Qi was given to me by master, but to me it's useless. You should keep it, it should be of great use. When you return, be careful. With that, she turned and returned to the inner hall. Inside the hall, Yi Xian tidied up and left Cloud's Word Hall. He made a table of dishes and sent them to array Dao Peak. Seeing Yi Xian, the lady in the hall glanced at him, but didn't say a word and continued to embroider her things. Yi Xian chuckled. Senior Aunt Gu, I'll be returning to Qingzhou in a while. The lady nodded slightly but didn't say a word. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then grinned. My trip will be a little dangerous. The lady glanced at Yi Xian but still didn't say a word. Yi Xian was a little helpless. He bowed. Take care, Senior Aunt Gu. With that, he turned and was about to leave. At this moment, a black box suddenly flew in front of him. Yi Xian was overjoyed. He quickly caught the box and turned to the lady. Senior Aunt Gu, this is? The lady said plainly, a temporary sword array, keep it for self-defense. Yi Xian quickly said, Thank you, Senior Aunt Gu. With that, he turned around and disappeared without a trace. In the hall, the lady shook her head slightly, a faint smile on her lips. After Yi Xian left the Cloudy Sword Hall, he went to the weapon crafting peak. Obviously everyone there knew him. Along the way, the disciples of the weapon crafting peak greeted him as senior brother. Yi Xian also greeted them back. Soon Yi Xian came to the belly of weapon forging peak and saw Zhan Tai. Yi Xian quickly bowed. Hello, Senior Aunt Zhan. Zhan Tai said plainly, What's the matter? Yi Xian chuckled. Nothing, I'm just here to see you, Senior Aunt. Zhan Tai was expressionless. If there's nothing, then go. I'm busy. But Yi Xian did not leave. He just stood there. Zhan Tai looked at Yi Xian. What's the matter? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, Martial Uncle Zhan, I'll be returning to Azure Prefecture this time to stop the Realm Defense Alliance from obtaining the origin heart of Azure Prefecture. You're aware of this as well. I'm still so young and I'm still so weak. Once I return, it will be dangerous. Zhan Tai nodded. It's quite dangerous. What should we do? Yi Xian rubbed his hands and smiled. That, Senior Aunt Zhan, you are the best weapon forging master in Azure Firmament World. You must have many treasures. Do you have any good equipment that I can lend to junior nephew? I promise I will return it. Zhan Tai said plainly, No. Not even a single hair. Yi Xian sighed. Sigh, forget it. Life and death are decreed by fate. Riches and honor are determined by heaven. Senior Aunt Jean, I will take my leave. Finishing his words, he turned and walked outside. But Zhang Tai did not have any intention of stopping him. Yi Xian walked very slowly. Very, very slowly. Half a day passed and he did not walk out. Just at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned to face Zhang Tai. Senior Aunt Jean, once I return it will be very dangerous. Are you really not going to think about it? Zhang Tai shook his head and sighed. How can your skin be so thick? Chapter 305. An hour later, Yi Xian left Weapon Forging Peak. In his prison tower there was an additional flying sword. Added with the graceful sword that Zhang Tai had custom-made for him, he now had a total of 2 flying swords. Moreover, they were both heaven tier. Now he was completely unafraid of true defensive magic tier elites. He was elated. Just like that, Yi Xian left the Pale Sword sect contentedly. He didn't go to find Lu Banzwang or Ling Han. Now he would cause trouble for whoever he went to. However, he didn't immediately return to Azure Province. Instead, he went to an ancient city called Drunken Immortal City. The headquarters of the Drunken Immortal Inn was here. The Drunken Immortal Inn wasn't listed as a super force in the Divine Central Continent, but no one dared to underestimate them. Because they were rich. Very, very rich. Once they had a lot of money, it would be very useful. For example, they could invite elites from other realms. The Kuraki Academy had done this before. However, the price was a little high. Ordinary forces couldn't afford it. When Yi Xian arrived at the Drunken Immortal Inn, he immediately flashed his black card. Soon an old man arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian had seen this man before. It was the 3rd floor master from before. Seeing Yi Xian, the 3rd floor master smiled slightly. Young friend, long time no see. You're already a sword emperor. As he spoke, he paused slightly and then said, How is your master? Yi Xian smiled. She's fine, she's fine. The mysterious woman was definitely fine. Who would dare to provoke her? The 3rd floor master made an inviting gesture. Young friend, please sit. Yi Xian didn't stand on ceremony. After sitting down, he took a sip of tea and then said, 3rd floor master, to tell you the truth, I've come this time to sell some things. The 3rd floor master smiled slightly. Naturally, no problem. Yi Xian nodded and then took out everything in one go. A huge pile. These were his spoils of war. Other than the few heaven-ranked treasures, the rest were useless to him. They were just taking up space, so he decided to sell them all. The 3rd floor master looked at the items in front of him and then looked at Yi Xian with a strange expression. Needless to say, these things were all robbed by this fellow. It was really a lot. Yi Xian smiled and said, 3rd floor master, how much can these things sell for? The 3rd floor master sized up the items. These items aren't worth much. They're worth around 1 billion or so top-grade spirit stones. Little friend, do you have anything good? Yi Xian grinned. No, I'm very poor. The 3rd floor master shook his head and smiled. How about this? I'll give you a favor. I'll give you 2 billion. Pack all these things up for me. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Isn't this Senior Ku? The 3rd floor master laughed and said, Talk about those things. Yi Xian smiled and said, 5 billion. It's settled then. It was best not to take advantage of such things. If he took too many advantages, no one would be willing to interact with him in the future. The 3rd floor master didn't say much. He pointed his finger and a storage ring flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't even look at it. He kept the storage ring and cupped his fists. 3rd floor master, I'll take my leave. The 3rd floor master smiled and said, Take care. Yi Xian turned around and left. After Yi Xian left, the 3rd floor master went silent for a long time. Then he turned around and walked into an inner hall. In the inner hall there was a black mirror. The 3rd floor master walked in front of the black mirror and bowed slightly. I wonder if the floor master has made a decision. A moment later, a voice came out from the mirror. Are you tempted by the Realm Defense Alliance's offer? The 3rd floor master smiled bitterly. I am tempted. Their offer is very tempting. However, I'm still a little hesitant. Why are you hesitating? The voice in the mirror asked. The 3rd floor master thought for a moment and said, That youth isn't simple. If he continues to grow, he might become the 2nd sword master. Furthermore, my Drunken Immortal building has a good relationship with him. If we were to betray the Realm Protection Alliance now, all our previous efforts would be in vain. A moment later, a voice rang out from the mirror again. We will not help either side. As for business, whether it is the Realm Defense Alliance or that youth, as long as they come to us, we will do business with them. As for the rest, we won't interfere. If High Lord Lu comes again, just tell him that this is my intention. He will understand. The third floor master bowed slightly. Understood. After he finished speaking, just as he was about to turn around and leave, the voice from the mirror spoke again. As for that young man, if it's possible, help him secretly. However, do not expose yourself. The third floor master was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. Understood. With that, he turned around and left. After leaving the drunken immortal Yin, Yi Xian did not linger and returned to Azure Province. This time he didn't ride the cloud ship. Instead, he flew on his sword. In any case, he had enough top-grade spirit stones. Now, he had about 10 billion top-grade spirit stones in the prison pagoda. 10 billion. What did that mean? Besides that, there were many heaven-grade treasures. Returning to Azure Province this time could be considered as returning home in glory. Azure Province. The current Azure Province was in a state of desolation. Especially after the spirit energy in many places had dried up, it was even more desolate. The chaos in Azure Province wasn't just caused by the exhaustion of spirit energy and the invasion of foreign enemies, there was also internal strife. When disaster descended, the first thought of countless people was to protect themselves. As long as nothing happened to them, who cared about the fate of others? Moreover, Blue Waves Academy that had once fought for Azure Province had vanished without a trace. Now, many people had begun to reminisce about Blue Waves Academy. Because when Blue Waves Academy and Yi Xian were around, Azure Province still had some order. As for now, so long as one had the strength, one could do as they pleased in the entire Azure Province. The spirit energy in Azure Province was getting thinner and thinner. Those with strength and ability had begun to flee Azure Province and head for the Divine Central Continent. However, none of the students of Blue Waves Academy had left. They were all waiting for Yi Xian to appear. The nation of Ning. Because of Yi Xian, no cultivators of the Divine Central Continent had invaded the nation of Ning, mainly because they didn't dare. However, there were exceptions. On this day, a group of cultivators from the Divine Central Continent arrived outside the imperial city of the nation of Ning. The leader was a man with a knife scar on his left cheek. He had a long scar that looked like a centipede and it was very ferocious. Behind him were more than 20 people. Most of them were at the Divine Combination realm. At this moment, an old man beside the scarred man said in a low voice, "The nation of Ning is Yi Xian's territory." The scarred man smiled savagely. "Yi Xian? I received news that Yi Xian has fled to the Divine Central Continent. Not only that, but the Realm Defense Alliance is also hunting him down. He doesn't dare show himself at all." The old man frowned deeply. "Brother Li, I think we'd better not provoke Yi Xian, especially when he's still alive." The scarred man said coldly, "Most of the places in Azure Province have been occupied by the Devil Sect and the Blood Sect. We've already looted most of the other places. Only the nation of Ning and the Great Cloud Empire are still considered wealthy. But Lian Wanli of the Great Cloud Empire is too powerful. The nation of Ning is the only one left." With that, he glanced at the people behind him. "After this, we'll all return to the Divine Central Continent. What do you think?" The people behind the scarred man were somewhat hesitant. Obviously, they were still somewhat afraid of Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian had slaughtered countless cultivators of the Divine Central Continent outside the imperial city of the Jiang Nation. Seeing their hesitation, the scarred man's face darkened. "The timid will starve to death and the bold will die. The nation of Ning is so wealthy. If we do this, we won't have to worry about food and clothing for decades to come." The old man beside the scarred man shook his head slightly. "Brother Li, the Devil Sect and the Blood Sect haven't attacked the nation of Ning. I think they're also afraid of Yi Xian. We really don't need to take this risk." The people behind the scarred man nodded. Although they all wanted to make a fortune, their lives were the most important. The scarred man's face grew even more unsightly at the sight of this. He glanced coldly at the crowd and said, "All right, let's cut the crap. Those who want to stay, stand behind me. Those who don't, leave immediately. However, don't blame me for not reminding you that the nation of Ning is very wealthy. Moreover, Lord Tuoba is only at the Dharma-controlling realm. There isn't even a law-controlling realm expert in the city. If you let this duck go, don't regret it in the future." Hearing the scarred man's words, some people behind him were tempted. The old man sighed in a low voice and said, "I've said what I should say. Brother Li, since you insist on going your own way," the old man doesn't want to say anything more. "Anyway, I don't want to take this risk. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and left. Among the more than 20 people, 5 or 6 people also left with the old man. After hesitating for a moment, more than a dozen people finally chose to stay. Obviously, they were tempted by the wealth of the nation of Ning. The scarred man glanced at the people behind him and said with a smile, "The timid will starve to death and the bold will die. As long as we finish this job, we'll immediately leave Qingzhou and hide. Even if Yi Xian is still here, what can he do to us? Follow me." After saying that, the group of people went straight to the imperial palace of the nation of Ning. When passing through the city gate, several guards suddenly stopped the scarred man and the others. The leading guard glanced at the scarred man and the others and said, "What do you want?" The scarred man revealed a savage smile. "What do we want?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly strode forward, and the guard didn't even have the chance to react before he slapped his palm against his chest. Bang! The guard's body instantly exploded into a mist of blood. The expressions of the other guards changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, but they didn't move forward because they would be giving their lives away. The scarred man's smile grew even more savage when he saw the guards retreat. "Brothers, it's time to change our destiny. Charge with me." As soon as he finished speaking, he was the first to charge forward. But it wasn't long before he stopped because a man was standing not too far away from him. The scarred man's expression instantly changed when he saw this man. "It's you? Weren't you at the Central Divine Prefecture?" As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and ran. The man before him was exactly Yi Xian. The scarred man hadn't even taken a few steps when Yi Xian appeared in front of him again. The scarred man's face instantly turned pale. In the next moment, his knees bent and he knelt before Yi Xian. "Big brother, I was wrong." Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Recently, some readers have said that they want to curse me. It's fine. So long as they don't say I'm ugly, then they can curse me however they like. However, if they dare to say I'm ugly, then I won't hold back. Chapter 306. Yi Xian was stunned. He's terrified just like that? And at this moment, the knife-scarred man who was kneeling in front of Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He dashed forward and instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Then, with a dagger in his hand, he slashed at Yi Xian's throat. He was extremely swift. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled when he saw the scarred man suddenly attack. So that's what he's trying to do. Unfortunately, he's greatly underestimated my strength. It didn't take long for the scarred man to stop, and there was a sword in the center of his forehead. When they saw this scene, the other group of over 10 turned around and fled. However, a flying sword suddenly flew out, and it was like a butterfly flying through flowers as it passed through the group of over 10 people. In just a breath of time, the heads of over 10 people flew up into the air. It was an extremely bloody scene. The scarred man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Weren't you at the Central Divine Prefecture?" Yi Xian grinned. "I just returned. Are you angry?" The scarred man's expression instantly turned extremely unsightly when he heard Yi Xian. "He just returned. In that case, he just made it in time. This was the worst luck of 8 lifetimes." The scarred man thought for a moment and said, "I admit defeat this time. So long as you're willing to spare my life, then I..." Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword suddenly moved forward. The sword instantly pierced through the scarred man's forehead. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "You're overthinking things." As soon as he finished speaking, he withdrew his sword, turned around and left. The scarred man's eyes were wide open on the spot, and he died with everlasting regret. After Yi Xian entered the city, he hadn't even taken a few steps before he stopped. 2 women were standing not too far away from him. It was Tuoba Yen and Jianji. Yi Xian ran up to the 2 girls as soon as he saw them. Then he hugged them. "I missed you so much." The 2 women's bodies stiffened. Obviously, they did not expect Yi Xian to act like this. At this moment, Tuoba Yen suddenly pushed Yi Xian away and glared fiercely at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a straight face, "This is a pure hug, no other thoughts." Jianji suddenly asked, "Are there any impure ones?" Yi Xian was speechless. After a while, Yi Xian followed the 2 women back to the Ning Kingdom's imperial palace. Inside Tuoba Yan's chamber, Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian. "Azure Province is getting more and more chaotic." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "The Realm Defense Alliance wants to obtain the Green Prefecture's origin heart. Once they obtain the Green Prefecture's origin heart, the Green Prefecture's spiritual energy will completely disappear within a year. At that time, the situation was even worse than now." Tuoba Yen frowned deeply. "Is the Realm Protection Alliance really going to destroy the Azure Province?" Yi Xian nodded. The Azure province is worthless in their eyes. With that, he paused slightly and continued, a senior once told me that the stronger some people are, the less human they are. Because to them, apart from the great Tao of immortality, everything else is fleeting. This kind of people no longer have any humanity, only divinity. This was what the mysterious woman said to him. In fact, he could feel that the mysterious woman did not care about many things. At her level, there should be very few things that could make her care. At this moment, Tuoba Yen suddenly said softly, "Will you become such a person in the future?" Jianji looked at Yi Xian. Meh. Yi Xian was stunned. If I had the mysterious woman's strength, would I also become indifferent to everything? After thinking for a moment, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. I don't know, but I will try my best not to become such a person. The great Tao, immortality, these were things he had never thought about before. Before he left Azure City, his greatest wish was to cure his younger sister's cold illness and make her happy. Of course, after he left, he had experienced many things, met many people, and had many more thoughts. If he reached the peak one day but the people by his side were gone, then it would be the peak of loneliness. When he thought up to this point, Yi Xian suddenly turned to the two women and smiled. I feel that problems will arise when one lives for too long. What? Because we're free. So, don't care about the great Tao of immortality. Living well in the present is the most important thing. Tuoba Yen shook his head with a smile, but it's difficult for us to live well right now. Yi Xian nodded, and then he walked to the entrance of the hall. He just stood there and no one knew what he was thinking. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. After a short while, Yi Xian said softly, I'm leaving. Tuoba Yen stood up. So soon? Yi Xian smiled. You can't bear to? Tuoba Yen glared at Yi Xian. Why is your skin getting thicker and thicker? Yi Xian laughed, walked over to Jianji, and then flipped his right hand and a saber appeared in his hand. It was the heaven-grade saber. Jianji was stunned when he saw the saber, and then he took it with eyes filled with fondness. Heaven-grade. Such a treasure was undoubtedly an extremely rare existence in Azure Province. What about me? Tuoba Yen suddenly asked. Yi Xian smiled, and then he gave the heaven-grade armor that he was wearing to Tuoba Yen. His current opponents were either at the true defensive magic realm or above, so this armor was not that useful to him anymore. Tuoba Yen was stunned when he saw the armor that Yi Xian handed over, and then he shook his head. Keep it for yourself. Yi Xian forcibly placed the armor in Tuoba Yan's hand. For me, this thing is not that useful anymore. With that, he waved his right hand and over 20 zombies suddenly appeared in the hall, all of them at the Myriad Law realm. Yi Xian took out a spatial ring and handed it to Tuoba Yen. There is a decaying corpse scripture in the spatial ring. You have to study it. With these zombies and my 12 golden men, as long as true defensive magic realm experts don't come, Ning country should be safe. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian. You're not staying here? Yi Xian chuckled. If I stay here, where will I sleep? Hearing this, Tuoba Yen looked provocatively at Yi Xian. Where do you want to sleep? Yi Xian said seriously. On the bed, of course. Tuoba Yen said indifferently. Then sleep on the bed. Yi Xian laughed and so he stayed. At night, Yi Xian once again came to Tuoba Yan's bedroom. Since Tuoba Yen wanted him to sleep on the bed, he naturally did not stand on ceremony and went straight to the bed. But soon he was stunned. Because there were two people on the bed. In addition to Tuoba Yen, there was also Jianji. Two people. Tuoba Yen sat up and looked at Yi Xian with a spurious smile. Didn't you want to sleep? Come on up. The provocation was self-evident. How could he back down? Yi Xian said seriously, since you strongly requested it, then I'm coming. With that, he jumped onto the bed and lay down between the two women. The two women were stunned. He really came up. Yi Xian held one in each hand and said seriously, sleep. On Yi Xian's left, Tuoba Yan's face was full of black lines. Clearly, she had underestimated the thickness of Yi Xian's skin. This guy's skin was thick to this extent. On the other hand, Jianji was still eating and did not say anything. Just like that, Yi Xian hugged one woman on each side. At first, it was quite satisfying, but soon, it became a little torturous. Holding two great beauties in his arms and not being able to do anything, it was very torturous. Late at night, Jianji was already asleep, but Tuoba Yen did not fall asleep because Yi Xian's hand was touching somewhere it should not be touching. Tuoba Yen grabbed Yi Xian's hand and warned, don't move. Yi Xian said seriously, I'm not moving. I'm serious. Tuoba Yen glared at Yi Xian. Anji is still here. Yi Xian said seriously, I'm not afraid. Tuoba Yen, another hour passed. At this time Tuoba Yan's breathing was a little rapid. Because she had a special physique, and now that Yi Xian's hand was restless, her body, which had a special physique, was starting to. At this moment, Tuoba Yan suddenly hugged Yi Xian. Yi Xian was shocked because he discovered that Tuoba Yan's body was burning like fire. Yi Xian hurriedly turned to the side and asked softly, "What's wrong?" Tuoba Yan hugged Yi Xian tightly and buried her head in Yi Xian's chest, her body trembling slightly. Yi Xian was about to say something when Tuoba Yan's pajamas suddenly slipped. At the same time, her hand touched a forbidden area for men, intolerable. Therefore Yi Xian blocked the world prison pagoda and gave her a taste of her own medicine. As the saying went, love in the middle of the night, two bodies as one, the golden spear fighting fiercely, the sweet dew dripping on the head of an inch of heart. That night he did not sleep, moving and trembling as he entered the immortal boat. That night he did not sleep, nor did he rest. Daybreak. The person on the bed had yet to get up. It was not until noon when the sun rose that Yi Xian sat up. At this moment he was the only one on the bed. Comfortable. Comfortable all over. It was as if his meridians had been cleansed. Yi Xian clicked his tongue in wonder. Could doing this kind of thing really help him cultivate? Last night the two of them were still immersed in that. Later on, the two of them decided to try the yin-yang meridian that he had once achieved. As for the feeling, it was still very wonderful, but both of their bodies had changed a little. But in that situation the two of them did not care so much. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian washed up and left the sleeping quarters. Then he came to the main hall. At this moment, Tuoba Yan was attending the morning court session. At this moment, Tuoba Yan was dressed in a dragon robe and had an invisible majesty between his brows. He was a completely different person from last night. Seeing Yi Xian arrive, Tuoba Yan put down the memorial in his hand. Court dismissed. Soon the officials retreated. In the hall, only Yi Xian and Tuoba Yan were left. Tuoba Yan was expressionless and did not speak. Yi Xian walked in front of her and said with a smile, "I'm going to leave. As for the Ning Kingdom, you don't have to worry. There are already powerhouses secretly guarding it. However, when necessary I hope you can hide. Of course, I'm talking about when you have no other choice." Tuoba Yan said solemnly, "The Realm Defense Alliance?" Yi Xian nodded. "The Realm Defense Alliance will make a big move soon. Before that, I have to go and stir up some trouble." Tuoba Yan was silent for a moment and then said softly, "Be careful." Yi Xian smiled and then leaned over to Tuoba Yan's ear. "Do you still have that medicine? Give me some for self-defense." Tuoba Yan. Chapter 307. Tuoba Yan kicked Yi Xian angrily. Yi Xian laughed. After coaxing and pestering he finally got a few white jade bottles. After getting what he wanted, Yi Xian did not stay and left Ning Kingdom. The Realm Defense Alliance should already know about his return to Azure Province. If he stayed in Ning Kingdom now, it would be disadvantageous to the country. After Yi Xian left, Jianji suddenly appeared in the hall. Seeing Jianji, Tuoba Yan seemed to think of something and blushed. Jianji sized up Tuoba Yan and was a little surprised. "Dharma Defense Realm?" Tuoba Yan nodded. Jianji was a little incredulous. "You were still at the Dharma Defense Realm yesterday. Why are you at the Dharma Defense Realm today?" Tuoba Yan was about to speak when Jianji suddenly said, "Was it because of your dual cultivation last night?" Hearing this, Tuoba Yan's face suddenly turned red like a burning cloud. She glared at Jianji angrily. Jianji said softly, "The commotion was too big. It woke me up." "Tuoba Yan," Jianji asked again, "was it really because of dual cultivation?" Tuoba Yan hesitated for a moment and nodded. It was indeed because of dual cultivation. Last night, after dual cultivation, she discovered that she had inexplicably improved. This improvement was too unexpected. Seeing Tuoba Yan nod, Jianji nodded slightly, appearing to be in deep thought. No one knew what he was thinking. After leaving Ning Kingdom, Yi Xian arrived at Great Cloud Empire on his sword. In the palace of Great Cloud Empire, Yi Xian saw Lian Wanli. At this moment, Lian Wanli's arm had recovered. Seeing Yi Xian, Lian Wanli smiled slightly. "Long time no see," Yi Xian said with a smile. "Not too long." Lian Wanli glanced at Yi Xian. "Walk with me." In the Imperial Garden on the gravel Xiao Dao, the two walked side by side. It was very quiet. The surrounding experts of Great Cloud Empire had already retreated stealthily. After a while, Lian Wanli suddenly said, "This Azure Province should not be able to be saved, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The Realm Defense Alliance will soon seize the Azure Province's origin heart. Once they take away the Azure Province's origin heart, the entire Azure Province's world energy will dry up in a short period of time. At that time, this land will no longer be suitable for cultivators to live in. Lien Wanli turned to look at Yi Xian. Can you stop it? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. That's hard to say. However, no matter what, I will do my best to prevent this Qingzhou origin heart from falling into the hands of the Realm Protection Alliance. He didn't know what the Realm Defense Alliance wanted the origin heart for, but he knew that nothing good would happen. Lien Wanli said softly, "These powerhouses don't treat people as humans too much." Yi Xian was about to say something, but suddenly he said with some surprise, "Dharma defensive state?" Lien Wanli smiled faintly, "I just arrived not long ago. Now, even if I encounter a Dharma defensive state expert, I can still kill him." Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Others said that Yi Xian was a monster, but in fact the real monsters in Azure Province were Shaoan and Lien Wanli. Especially Lien Wanli, this was a person who was seriously underestimated. After a while, Lien Wanli suddenly stopped. She squatted down and saw a row of ants slowly crawling on the ground. Lien Wanli said softly, "In the eyes of those high and mighty cultivators of the Realm Protection Alliance, we are just like these ants." Saying that, she looked up at Yi Xian. "After this matter, I'm going to focus on martial Dao. My goal is to reach the Supreme Realm for the time being." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Let's do it together." Lien Wanli smiled faintly, "Do it?" 2 hours later, Yi Xian left the Great Cloud Empire and came to a small city. In the city, he walked to a tavern where an old man with a long sword on his back was sitting. Yi Xian walked behind the old man and bowed slightly. "Greetings, martial uncle." The person in front of him was Zhang Xian, who Qin Beihan had sent to protect the people around him. Zhang Xian nodded. "Sit." Yi Xian sat opposite Zhang Xian. Zhang Xian glanced at him. "Is everything done?" Yi Xian nodded. "Almost." Zhang Xian nodded. "The Realm Protection Alliance will be making a move soon, and there are signs of the origin heart appearing in the secluded desolate mountain range." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "This matter is of great importance. The Realm Protection Alliance will definitely send many experts, right?" Zhang Xian said, "Even Supreme Lord Lu will come personally." Supreme Lord Lu. Yi Xian's face darkened. This person was an expert above the True Defense Law stage. Although he could kill True Defense Law stage experts, he was still no match for a top expert like Supreme Lord Lu. At this moment, Zhang Xian said, "Don't worry, the sect master will personally hold Supreme Lord Lu back. Leave the rest to us." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Do you want a decisive battle?" Zhang Xian smiled, "More or less. In short, the origin heart must not fall into the hands of the Realm Protection Alliance. This time, the sect master did not ask you to stop the Realm Protection Alliance, but to train you. Of course, given your current strength, you will be of great help." Yi Xian nodded. "Understood." As long as it was to cause trouble for the Realm Protection Alliance, Yi Xian was willing to do it. Zhang Xian nodded. "Go to the secluded desolate mountain range first, don't go out in the open, then hide and wait for an opportunity. As for your family in Qingzhou, don't worry, the sect has sent people to secretly protect them." Yi Xian stood up and bowed. "Martial uncle, martial nephew will take his leave first." With that, he turned and left the tavern. After leaving the small city, Yi Xian headed straight for the secluded desolate mountain range. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at the secluded desolate mountain range. When he arrived, his expression suddenly changed. All the trees in the entire mountain range had withered, and the ground had cracked open, with waves of heat seeping out from the cracks. He did not expect that many places in Qingzhou had reached such a level. If the Realm Protection Alliance seized the origin heart, the entire Qingzhou would undoubtedly become like this. At that time, Qingzhou would no longer be able to produce new martial artists, because there would be no spirit qi. A moment later, Yi Xian entered the mountain range. This time he had completely concealed himself so no one could discover him. Not long after Yi Xian walked, he stopped and said, "Guru on the second floor, can you sense the heart of origin?" After a moment of silence, the second floor expert suddenly said, "Not interested." "Not interested." Yi Xian's face darkened. How could he not be interested? He hurriedly said, "The origin heart must not fall into the hands of the Realm Protection Alliance. Second floor expert, if you can feel it, we can go and get it first." "Not interested." This was the second floor expert's answer. "There are benefits," Yi Xian said. "What benefits?" the second floor expert suddenly asked. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. What benefits do you want? Bang. At this moment, the second floor of the prison tower suddenly shook violently, and then an angry roar came from the second floor. Let me out. Yi Xian. In all fairness, he really did want to let this god on the second floor out. Although this guy was a little hot-tempered, he was still alright. He wasn't particularly bad. The problem was, without the second layer of the Dao Law, he could not do anything. After a moment, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Second floor expert, you also know that I have no way to open the second layer of the seal. How about this, when things here are over, I will find the second Dao Law and let you out. When that time comes, you can go wherever you want. What do you think? The second floor expert was silent for a moment, then said, You big hoodwinker. Yi Xian's face darkened. Second floor expert, you have to speak with a conscience. When have I, Yi Xian, ever hoodwinked my own people? This time the second floor expert did not speak. This was because after following Yi Xian until now, she realized that although Yi Xian was usually a little slippery, he was very good to his own people. After a moment, the second floor expert suddenly said, Underground. Underground? Yi Xian was delighted and hurriedly asked, You mean the heart of the origin source is underground? The second floor expert said, Yes. Yi Xian asked again, Where is it? After a moment, the second floor expert said, Its aura is erratic, we have to find it. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Naturally, he knew that the heart of the origin source was underground, but the problem was, if he did not know the exact location, how could he find it in such a large underground place? At this moment, the second floor expert said again, Trick it out. Trick. Yi Xian's expression froze. How could he trick it? The second floor expert did not speak. After a moment, Yi Xian sighed softly. This second floor expert was a little unreliable. Did he really think that Yi Xian's mouth was invincible and could do anything? Yi Xian thought for a long time. In the end, he still decided to give it a try. Who knows, he might really trick it out. Yi Xian sat on the ground. He patted the ground and said, Well, I think you should be able to hear me. It's like this, the Realm Defense Alliance is waiting for you to come out. If you come out, they will definitely capture you and then your end will be very, very miserable. Of course, it's useless if you don't come out, they will force you out. At this point, he paused slightly and then said, If you believe me, come out and follow me. Don't worry, I will never hurt you, and I will not let the Realm Defense Alliance hurt you. After that, Yi Xian waited quietly. However, there was no movement. At this moment, the second floor expert suddenly said, I'm afraid you are a fool. Yi Xian, the second floor expert suddenly said angrily, Tell it that there are benefits, understand? Benefits? Yi Xian suddenly understood. That's right, if there were no benefits, why would it follow him? Thinking of this, Yi Xian quickly said, If you follow me, not only can you keep yourself safe, but you can also have whatever you want. After that, Yi Xian waited. However, there was still no movement. Yi Xian said indifferently, Second floor expert, look, your method is useless. At this time, an illusory beast suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the second floor expert. However, it was not her real body. The second floor expert looked coldly at Yi Xian, and the next moment she slammed her claw on the ground, Come out or not. Boom. The whole ground shook violently. At this time, the second floor expert slammed her claw down again and said angrily, Come out or not. Boom. The whole ground collapsed. Yi Xian. P.S. A reader invited me to wash her feet, and as I was washing, the girl asked the handsome guy, Do you need any other service? I really don't understand what she means. Also, I don't know why the brother took me to wash her feet instead of taking me to eat. In your eyes, am I such a person? Chapter 308. Yi Xian was dumbfounded at the sight of the angry guru on the second floor. Was this girl crazy? She had such a bad temper. Just as the second floor guru continued to slap the ground, a ball of white light suddenly appeared in front of her. This was? Yi Xian was stunned. The second floor guru glanced at Yi Xian. She's out. After saying that, she disappeared directly. She was out. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He quickly looked at the ball of white light. In the white light, there was a fist-sized little girl. The little girl was very, very small, wearing a small white doo-doo, and behind her head were two small whips. At this moment, her two little hands were clenched tightly, and she was glaring at Yi Xian. Yi Xian spread his hands. I didn't do it. The little girl suddenly pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Human, damn human, you destroyed the earth, destroyed the heaven and earth spiritual energy, you will suffer retribution. Yi Xian said seriously, I really didn't do this. With that said, he walked towards the little girl, and at this moment, a white light screen blocked in front of him. The little girl looked at Yi Xian warily. "Don't come over or I'll kill you." Yi Xian squeezed out a smile. "I am not a bad person." The little girl glared at Yi Xian. "Bad people always say they're not bad. You have a strong murderous intent, you must have killed many people." "Yi Xian." The little girl looked around warily and then said, "Where's that little girl just now?" "Second floor, Guru." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then pointed to his chest. "She went inside." The little girl looked at Yi Xian's chest and the next moment she flew into a rage. "Human! Do you think I'm as stupid as you? I'm the invincible, the most invincible, the smartest heart of Qingzhou." Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Was this a demon? The little girl still wanted to say something, but the Almighty on the second floor suddenly appeared again. It had to be said that the second floor god's appearance was very cute, especially his pair of crystal blue eyes, which were extremely beautiful. Unfortunately, his temper was 2F** king explosive, exploding at the slightest provocation. Seeing the god on the second floor, the little girl let down her guard. She floated in front of the god and begged, "Can you protect me?" Obviously, she had witnessed the strength of the second floor's Almighty. The Almighty on the second floor glanced at the little girl and then pointed at Yi Xian. "He can do it." The little girl glanced at Yi Xian and shook her head. Too weak. You can't even beat me." Yi Xian was speechless. The Almighty on the second floor pointed at Yi Xian's chest. "It's safe inside." The little girl glanced at Yi Xian's chest and blinked. "Can I go in?" The Almighty on the second floor nodded. The little girl floated in front of Yi Xian and then hugged Yi Xian, trying to push her head against Yi Xian's chest. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get in. Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl turned to look at the Almighty on the second floor, her eyes full of doubt. "She can't." The Almighty on the second floor looked at Yi Xian. "Let her in." Yi Xian hesitated for a while and then said, "Can I go in?" He had never pretended to be a living person before, and he didn't dare to because the mysterious woman had told him that if a living person went in, the prison pagoda would automatically defend itself and kill the other party. The Almighty on the second floor looked at the little girl. "She's not human." The little girl blinked. "Am I not human?" The Almighty on the second floor asked. "Are you?" The little girl looked at her body and then said, "I think I am." The Almighty on the second floor was expressionless. "That's just what you think. Hurry up and go in." The little girl still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian and the Almighty on the second floor's faces suddenly changed. The next moment, the Almighty on the second floor disappeared from the spot, and Yi Xian hurriedly grabbed the little girl and sent her into the prison pagoda. Less than a breath's time after the little girl and the Almighty on the second floor disappeared, an old man suddenly appeared in the sky above Yi Xian. The person who came was Yi Xian's old acquaintance, Mo Xiu. Seeing Yi Xian, Mo Xiu's brows furrowed. "It's you." Yi Xian chuckled. "Elder Mo, long time no see. You're getting younger and younger." Mo Xiu stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, did you see something?" "What?" Yi Xian frowned. "See what?" Mo Xiu stared at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian looked around. "Is there something here?" Mo Xiu asked in a low voice. "What are you doing here?" Yi Xian grinned. "Guess." Mo Xiu stared at Yi Xian for a long time, then smiled and said, "Yi Xian, your good days are coming to an end. Also, your blue sword sect's good days are also coming to an end. Once we get our hands on the origin heart of Qingzhou, you will realize how foolish it is to go against my realm defense alliance." Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders. "Wait until I finish cultivating my divine art. At that time, you will discover that targeting me, Yi Xian, was the stupidest decision your realm protection alliance has ever made." Saying this, he grinned. Who doesn't know how to boast? Saying this, he turned around and left. Mo Xiu did not stop Yi Xian because he knew that he could not stop him. Yi Xian. Regardless of whether he was willing to admit it or not, Yi Xian wasn't someone that a true Imperial Magic Realm expert could kill now. At the very least, an ordinary true Imperial Magic Realm expert couldn't. After Yi Xian left, a few old men suddenly appeared by Mo Xiu's side, and one of them said in a low voice, "We sensed the aura of the origin heart earlier, but we didn't notice anything after arriving here. How strange." As he spoke, he glanced at the direction Yi Xian had left. "That person is slightly strange." Mo Xiu spoke indifferently. "He's always been strange." The old man hesitated for a moment and then he said, "Then could the Qingzhou's origin heart have already?" Mo Xiu shook his head. "Absolutely impossible." The origin heart is extremely vigilant, and it's impossible for it to easily trust humans. Moreover, with Yi Xian's strength, it's impossible for him to capture it and take it away without making a sound. Moreover, there are no signs of a battle here. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him go. The old man thought for a moment and then he nodded. Indeed. If he was able to obtain the origin heart so easily, then it would be too unreasonable. However, his aura is strong and he's even a sword emperor. Even if his potential isn't as great as the firmament sword master from all those years ago, it isn't much inferior. If it's possible, then it's best to eliminate him as soon as possible. Emoshio nodded slightly. Don't worry, the Exalt has a plan. So long as we obtain the origin heart, then we'll immediately annihilate this person and the firmament sword sect. Now we'll let them have their fun today. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The old man and the others turned around and left as well. On the other side, after Yi Xian found a place with no one around, he immediately entered the World Prison Pagoda. Within the pagoda, a little girl was looking all around the first level, and her eyes were filled with curiosity. As he gazed at the palm-sized little girl before him, Yi Xian was slightly amused. He hadn't expected that the Qingzhou's origin heart would actually be such a little girl. The little girl looked curiously for a long time, and then she suddenly smiled in the end. Her smile was extremely brilliant and extremely happy. Yi Xian was a little curious. What are you smiling at? The little girl looked at Yi Xian and blinked her eyes. Safe, it's safe here. Finally, I don't have to hide everywhere. And I'll be staying here from now on. Help me get some food, I want some spiritual fruits. Very, very big, very sweet ones. As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something. With a wave of her hand, a large pile of crystals fell in front of Yi Xian. Purple source crystals. There were more than 1,000 of them. Moreover, these purple source crystals were extremely big, at least twice the size of the ones he had obtained before. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. These are all for you. Go and get me something to eat. Yi Xian gulped, and then kept all the purple source crystals without batting an eyelid. Following that, he nodded his head. Okay, I'll go get them now. If you have any other requests, feel free to tell me. Don't stand on ceremony. Really, don't stand on ceremony. Little girl? Chapter 309. More than 1,000 purple source crystals. Yi Xian really did not expect this little girl to be so rich. Resource crystals were something that even a true defensive magic realm expert needed. Moreover, above the Dharma realm, the common currency among experts was the purple source crystal. This was because resource crystals had enough spiritual energy and were extremely useful. On the contrary, things like top-grade spirit stones were not so useful to experts above the Dharma realm. Of course, top-grade spirit stones were also very useful, because top-grade spirit stones were needed to nurture newcomers. Purple source crystals were too precious. Before reaching the Dharma realm, it would be a waste to use them. Inside the pagoda, the little girl no longer paid attention to Yi Xian. She strolled left and right until she reached the second floor. Even Yi Xian did not know how she got there. And Yi Xian also discovered that the prison pagoda did not reject this little girl at all. Although this little girl was a little wary of Yi Xian, for some reason she was not wary of the great god on the second floor. This made Yi Xian extremely depressed. Was he more terrifying than the great god on the second floor? Yi Xian no longer paid attention to the little girl and left the desolate mountain range. It had to be said that Yi Xian did not expect to obtain the Qingzhou origin heart on this trip. One must know that the Realm Protection Alliance had been fighting for the Qingzhou origin heart for a very long time. For the sake of the Qingzhou origin heart, the Realm Protection Alliance could be said to have racked their brains. If the Realm Protection Alliance knew that the Qingzhou origin heart had fallen into his hands so easily, who knew if they would die of anger? Of course, he naturally would not be stupid enough to tell others about this. If he did, the Realm Protection Alliance would definitely go crazy and come after him. After leaving the desolate mountain range, Yi Xian decided to return to Jiang country to take a look. Because he had not been back for a long time. Jiang country's imperial capital. Yi Xian arrived at the gate of Jiang country's imperial capital. The gate was broken and the city walls were in a mess. Moreover, there was the smell of blood and rotting corpses. Yi Xian was silent for a moment before walking in. There were very few people in the city and rotten corpses could be seen everywhere. There were also new corpses and broken limbs everywhere. Yi Xian walked all the way to Blue Waves Academy. It was still the former Blue Waves Academy, but there was no one there. No. Someone was there. Yi Xian arrived at the peak of the Blue Wave Palace. And inside the Blue Wave Palace, Yi Xian discovered some people. Not only the Blue Wave Palace, but all the other palaces on the mountain had people. Yi Xian walked into the Blue Waves Palace. There were at least 100 people inside the palace and some of them were still sleeping. When they saw Yi Xian walk in, some people only glanced at him before withdrawing their gazes. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, "What are all of you doing here?" Everyone looked at him but no one answered. At this moment a man walked out. He was about 20 years old and had a roguish air. The man walked to the front of Yi Xian and sized up Yi Xian. "Are you also here to seek asylum?" "Seek asylum?" Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" The man smiled. "What do you mean? You don't know?" "My Blue Waves Academy's Dean Yi Xian said that as long as you pay the best quality spirit stones, you can come to my Blue Waves Academy and receive my asylum. You see, Qing province is in chaos now, but no one dares to invade my Blue Waves Academy." Hearing this, Yi Xian's complexion sank. "Are you from Blue Waves Academy?" The man took out a token. "Do you see this? Student token. I am a student of Blue Waves Academy. Now I am in charge of everything in Blue Waves Academy." Yi Xian glanced at the token and his complexion suddenly became gloomy. This token is real. However, this person is fake. There were not many students in Blue Waves Academy and he knew all of them, but this person was definitely not among them. Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then asked, "How many best quality spirit stones?" The man smiled. 1,000 best quality spirit stones. 1,000. Yi Xian was about to speak when the man grinned. "It's 1,000 best quality spirit stones a day. 1,000 a day." Yi Xian knitted his eyebrows tightly when he heard that. He had sensed that there were at least several thousand people on Blue Waves Mountain. 1,000 a day. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly turned to the people in the hall. "From now on, you don't have to pay the best quality spirit stones a day." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. But the man in front of Yi Xian looked somewhat sinister. "Brother, are you here to cause trouble?" As he spoke, he pointed at Yi Xian's chest. "Even the cultivators of the divine central continent don't dare to invade my Blue Waves Academy. Who the fuck are you?" Yi Xian smiled. "You're only at the Nether Passage realm. You definitely don't have the ability to do this. You must have someone behind you, right?" The man smiled sinisterly. "Of course I have someone behind me. Behind me is Blue Waves Academy's Dean Yi Xian. Have you heard of Yi Xian?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes, a very very handsome man. I admire him very much." The man sneered. "Since you've heard of him, why don't you get lost?" Yi Xian smiled. "Tell the person behind you to come out." The man wanted to say something but Yi Xian suddenly kicked. Bang bang. The bones in the man's knees instantly shattered, and he fell to his knees in front of Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian suddenly attack, everyone in the hall was stunned. Someone dared to attack Blue Waves Academy? In front of Yi Xian, the man roared hysterically. You bastard, how dare you! Dean Yi will not let you off." Yi Xian shook his head. "I think he will let me off." The man stared at Yi Xian with hatred. "He will definitely not let you off. He will definitely exterminate your entire family." Yi Xian touched his nose. "I think he won't exterminate my entire family. I can be sure of this." The man wanted to say something but at this moment, an old man not far away suddenly stood up. He looked at Yi Xian with some disbelief and said with a trembling voice, You are Dean Yi?" "Dean Yi?" Everyone looked at Yi Xian at the same time. At this moment they realized that the person in front of them was somewhat familiar. The reason why they did not recognize Yi Xian was because Yi Xian had left for a long time, and not everyone had seen Yi Xian before. In front of Yi Xian the man also looked at him. As he looked, the man's expression became somewhat ugly, and in the end, his body had already started to tremble. Obviously he had already recognized Yi Xian. The man said with a trembling voice, Your Excellency, I was as blind as a bat. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Tell me who told you to do this?" The man's expression became somewhat ugly and he hesitated for a long time and finally shook his head. "If I don't speak I will die, if I speak I will die and my entire family will die." Yi Xian said indifferently, "You want to bargain with me?" The man hurriedly said, "I dare not, I just hope that your excellency can protect my family." Yi Xian smiled. "If you really want to protect your family then you should commit suicide. Once you commit suicide, I believe that those people behind you will definitely not cause trouble for your family. However, you dare not commit suicide." The man's expression became somewhat ugly, and just when he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly pointed his fingers together. The man's right arm was directly sent flying. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The man's face instantly turned pale. Yi Xian smiled. "You still won't speak?" The man was about to speak, but at this moment, a middle-aged man nearby suddenly said, "I know who it is." Yi Xian faced the middle-aged man, and at this moment, the man in front of him hurriedly said, "It's..." At this moment, a ray of sword light had already pierced the man's forehead. The man looked at Yi Xian in a daze. Yi Xian smiled, "If you had admitted your mistake from the beginning and confessed, then I would have let you live. Unfortunately, it's too late now." After saying that, he walked to the middle-aged man nearby, and the latter slightly bowed. "Greetings, Din Yi." Din Yi. Everyone hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian when they heard the middle-aged man, and some of their eyes even revealed undisguised excitement and happiness. "Yi Xian. He's back again." Yi Xian smiled, "There's no need for all of this." As he spoke, he gazed at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man spoke in a low voice. "The power behind that man is a group of mercenaries from the Central Divine Prefecture. They're staying in the Imperial Palace of the Jiang Kingdom right now, and they're in charge of the Imperial capital." The Imperial Palace of the Jiang Kingdom. Yi Xian nodded slightly and then he turned around and left. He suddenly stopped when he arrived at the entrance and then he said, "All of you'll be staying here from now onward, and you don't have to pay top-grade spirit stones. However, if we return one day, then I hope that all of you can leave at that time. This place is for all of you to stay temporarily, not for all of you. I hope all of you understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he left Darkwave Hall and headed straight for the Imperial Palace of the Jiang Kingdom. Yi Xian was very clearly aware that a person's heart wasn't content. On many occasions when he gave others convenience, they would take it for granted. Moreover, if he didn't deal with many things well, then it would cause a huge amount of trouble in the future. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive at the Imperial Palace of the Jiang Kingdom. At this moment, the Imperial Palace of the Jiang Kingdom was in a very miserable state because everyone had left. Yi Xian hadn't intended to ask them to return right now. Because the Realm Defense Alliance hadn't been dealt with yet, so it was very likely that they would be targeted by the Realm Defense Alliance if they returned. After he entered the Imperial Palace, Yi Xian went straight to the Supreme Harmony Hall. It didn't take long for a man to obstruct his path, and the man gazed coldly at Yi Xian. "Fuck off." Yi Xian smiled and then he raised his sword and swung it. The man's head instantly flew into the air. It didn't take long for a few dozen people to charge out from all directions and surround Yi Xian. At the same time, a middle-aged man walked over to Yi Xian. He glanced at Yi Xian with a slightly vigilant expression. "I'm the leader of the Hunyuan mercenary group. May I know who you are?" Yi Xian smiled. "You're the one who occupied Blue Waves Academy and collected the so-called protection fee every day?" The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're from Blue Waves Academy?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian for a long time, and then he said, "Your Excellency, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Yi Xian has already died in the Central Divine Prefecture, and even his corpse has been eaten by wild dogs. Your Excellency is risking your life for Blue Waves Academy. It's not worth it." Yi Xian was speechless. "P.S. My friends, I haven't had any holidays during the new year. Just consider it as a holiday. Because I have some matters to deal with during this period, so I can't stay at home every day. Thank you." Chapter 310. I died in the Central Divine Prefecture? Yi Xian was flabbergasted. "Are you sure that Yi Xian died in the Central Divine Prefecture?" The middle-aged man laughed coldly. "How could it be fake? Yi Xian offended the Realm Defense Alliance, so how could he have survived the Realm Defense Alliance's bounty?" Yi Xian nodded. "You're right." As he spoke, he suddenly pressed the fingers of his right hand together and swept them forward. Boom. A sword howl resounded, and then a ray of light flashed. In an instant, the mercenaries around Yi Xian and the middle-aged man were instantly slashed into two at the waist. The middle-aged man was stunned by this scene. An instant later, he gazed at Yi Xian with terror. You're Yi Xian." Yi Xian smiled. "You're right. I'll reward you with a sword strike." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand. The middle-aged man's head flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. The middle-aged man's eyes were wide open. Obviously he died with everlasting regret. Yi Xian took the spatial rings of everyone here and glanced at them. There were all sorts of things within them and there were over 1.6 billion top-grade spirit stones. 1.6 billion. In the Qingzhou region, it was already very, very terrifying to be able to have 1.6 billion. It was obvious how many cities these fellows had plundered during this period of time. Yi Xian took the spatial rings and was just about to leave. Suddenly, the voice of the god on the second floor resounded. She went to the fourth floor. The fourth floor. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he hurriedly entered the pagoda. The little girl wasn't on the first floor, nor was she on the second floor, nor was she on the third floor. The fourth floor. Yi Xian was stunned. How did she get up there? I don't know. This was the answer from the god on the second floor. Yi Xian gulped. This second floor guru, this is not normal. How could she have possibly entered? How would I know? The guru on the second floor was a little angry. At this moment, a white light suddenly flashed on the first level. Soon the little girl appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian quickly asked, You went to the fourth floor? The little girl nodded. Yi Xian asked again, What's on the fourth floor? The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. It told me not to tell you. It also told me to be careful of you. You are a very thick-skinned person. As she spoke, she flew in front of Yi Xian, and then pinched Yi Xian's face with her small hand. She said with some doubt, It's not very thick. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the little girl suddenly stretched out her little hand. Where's the spirit fruit? Yi Xian hurriedly took out some spirit fruits and gave them to the little girl. When she saw the spirit fruits, the little girl instantly beamed with joy and grabbed them. Unfortunately, the spirit fruits were too big, even bigger than her body. However, this didn't stop her from eating them. In just a few bites, the spirit fruit had been completely devoured by her. The little girl stretched out her hand again. Clearly she wanted more. Yi Xian placed all of the spiritual fruits in front of the little girl. These were his trophies from the battles he had won in the past. He didn't sell all the spirit fruits to the third-floor master of the Drunken Immortal building, but kept some for himself. Seeing so many spirit fruits, the little girl was incredibly excited. She picked up a spirit fruit and started munching on it. At the side, Yi Xian smiled and said, Is it delicious? The little girl nodded her head. Yes, it's delicious. Yi Xian smiled and asked, What's on the fourth floor? Little girl shaking his head, he said, I can't tell you. Yi Xian said seriously, Aren't we friends? Friends? The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. Then what is it? Yi Xian. The little girl looked at Yi Xian and then shook her head. You're a human. Humans are the most untrustworthy. Not a single human is good. Saying that, she seemed to think of something and put the spirit fruit aside, her expression a little sad. This place was originally fine, but you people wantonly destroyed it. A lot of blood flowed into the ground. You people are really bad. After saying that, she even glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent. Destruction. Obviously, because of the wanton destruction of the Qingzhou continent, the outside was no longer suitable for this little girl to live in. Moreover, the Realm Protection Alliance was looking for her everywhere. If she fell into the hands of the Realm Protection Alliance, she definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and smiled slightly. Little girl. I still don't know your name. The little girl shook her head. I won't tell you that my name is Xiaolinger. Yi Xian nodded. Okay, I won't know your name is Xiaolinger. Xiaolinger looked at Yi Xian and blinked, feeling that something was wrong. But she didn't think much of it and continued to nibble on the spirit fruit. Yi Xian also didn't ask Xiaolinger what was on the fourth floor, because it was meaningless to ask more. When he got the Dao Law, he would naturally know what was on the fourth floor. However, this little girl could actually go to the fourth floor. This really shocked him. Since she could go to the fourth floor, it was possible that she could go to the fifth, sixth, the ninth floor. Yi Xian was a little curious about what was locked up on the ninth floor. After playing with Xiaolinger for a while, Yi Xian left the prison tower. At this time, the voice of the great god on the second floor sounded again. You must bring that woman back as soon as possible, otherwise you're finished. The mysterious woman. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Where could he find the mysterious woman? But to be honest, he really missed the mysterious woman a little. After a while, Yi Xian shook his head and turned to leave. After leaving the palace of Jiang country, Yi Xian went to the Devil Sect. At this time, the overall strength of the Devil Sect could be said to have skyrocketed, because in Qingzhou, they could develop unscrupulously without anyone stopping them. Not only that, but they also had the support of the Realm Protection Alliance. Under such circumstances, the strength of all the disciples in the Devil Sect was greatly improved. In the main hall of the Devil Sect, Ku Mingshu suddenly opened his eyes and saw a man in a gray robe standing not far away from him. The man in the gray robe just stood there without any aura, as if he didn't exist. Seeing this person, Ku Mingshu's face changed and he quickly got up. Senior? The man in the gray robe nodded slightly. Sect leader Ku, how have you been? Ku Mingshu quickly said, May I know why you're here, senior? The man in the gray robe said indifferently. Sect leader Ku should know about the matter between the Pale Sword sect and the Realm Protection Alliance, right? Ku Mingxiu nodded slightly. Yes. Right, my devil sect won't participate in it. The man in the gray robe spoke indifferently. Sect leader Ku, if I were you, I would stop right now and leave Qingzhou. Ku Mingxiu frowned when he heard this. The devil sect was developing rapidly right now, so it would be a great loss to leave now. The man in the gray robe said, Sect leader Ku, if you're unwilling to leave now, then your devil sect won't be able to leave in the future. Ku Mingxiu gazed at the man in the gray robe. Senior, please tell me what to do. The man in the gray robe said, Now that the Green Province is in chaos, the Origin Heart is about to appear. Once the Origin Heart appears, your Devil Sect and Blood Sect will no longer have any value to the Realm Defense Alliance. At that time, the slightest mistake will cause your Devil Sect and Blood Sect to be doomed eternally. Ku Mingxiu hesitated for a moment and said, I don't think so. Exalt Lu promised my Devil Sect that the entire Qingzhou will belong to my Devil Sect in the future. You believe that? The man in the gray robe spoke coldly. Don't you know what the Realm Protection Alliance is like? Right now they need your Devil Sect. Therefore they will agree to any of your requests. However, once they obtain the Origin Source Heart, your Devil Sect will no longer have any value to them. As he spoke, he paused slightly before he continued. Moreover, the Quintessence Core is about to emerge in the Pine Prefecture. Once it does, then the Pine Prefecture will become a huge vortex. If your Devil Sect continues staying here, then it's impossible to guarantee that you won't be swept into the vortex. At that time, it'll be difficult for your Devil Sect to leave. Ku Mingxiu was still hesitating. The man in the gray robe spoke abruptly. Since sect leader Ku isn't willing to leave, then I won't say anything further. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Right at this moment, Ku Mingxiu suddenly said, Senior, please wait. The man in the gray robe stopped, and Ku Mingxiu asked, May I ask if there are any other powers besides the Pale Sword sect that are acting against the Realm Protection Alliance? The man in the gray robe spoke indifferently. What do you think? Ku Mingxiu hesitated for a moment, and then he bowed slightly. Senior, please enlighten me. The man in the gray robe fell silent for a moment, and then he said, The Profound Gate has expressed its intention to join us. Ku Mingxiu was shocked when he heard this, and he was about to speak when the man in the gray robe had vanished. Within the hall, Ku Mingxiu sat on the chair and fell silent for a very long time. At this moment, his heart was like a tempestuous storm. The Profound Gate. That's an extremely mysterious power, and it's definitely extremely strong. If it was just the Pale Sword sect, then it would definitely be unable to defeat the Realm Protection Alliance. But if the Profound Gate was included, then it would be difficult to say. Moreover, there might be more than one Profound Gate. At this moment, Ku Mingxiu was in a dilemma. Should I leave or not? If he left now, then it would truly be a loss for him. But if he didn't leave, then he really didn't want to get involved in the muddy waters of Qingzhou. Within the hall, Ku Mingxiu fell silent for a very long time, and then he shook his head and sighed. There was a pitch-black vortex somewhere in the starry sky. Suddenly, a star cloud shuttle flew out from within the pitch-black vortex. A middle-aged man and an old man stood on the star cloud shuttle. The old man glanced at the surroundings and frowned deeply. It's so remote. The person we're looking for shouldn't be here, right? The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. We can't miss any place. If we still can't find him, then once that person gets angry, our Spirit Void Star Palace will probably be completely destroyed. When he heard this, the old man seemed to have thought of something, and fear instantly appeared in his eyes. That woman. That terrifying woman. The middle-aged man shook his head slightly. I wonder where exactly that person is. Alas. The old man said in a low voice, This world should be under the jurisdiction of the Realm Protection Alliance. Should we go look for them and ask them to help us search? Realm Protection Alliance? The middle-aged man looked at the old man. Why haven't I heard of it? The old man said indifferently, A third-rate power. It's normal that you haven't heard of it. The middle-aged man nodded. Then let's go meet them. I hope we'll be able to gain something this time. Otherwise, I don't dare to return. In next to no time, the star cloud shuttle vanished into the boundless starry sky. Chapter 311. After leaving the Devil Sect, Yi Xian immediately entered a mountain range. This time he had come to the Devil Sect out of compassion. As long as the Devil Sect was still in Qingzhou, there would definitely be countless people who would suffer. Although he could not change the current situation in Qingzhou, he was still willing to help the countless living beings in Qingzhou as long as it was within his power. As for himself, there was only one thing to do now, and that was to cultivate. The Realm Defense Alliance would soon make a big move, and before that he had to improve his strength. Although there was the Pale Sword sect, countless facts had told him that people could only rely on themselves. Only by relying on himself could he be relied on. In the mountain range, Yi Xian came to a small stream and sat on a boulder beside the stream. A moment later, a small empty character suddenly appeared between his brows. Space Dao Law. He was now in the Dharma Defensive Realm, and what he needed to do was to break through to the true Dharma Defensive Realm. Although he did not have a spirit sword, he wanted to give it a try. The so-called true Dharma Defensive Realm was to be able to control space. Regarding space, Yi Xian actually did not know much because his Dharma Defensive Realm had been improved by relying on the Space Dao Law. To put it bluntly, it was a little overstated. Since Yi Xian began to sense everything around him. He felt the wind, the earth, the river, and also space. This space was a little illusory and even a little mysterious. When a warrior cultivated to a certain level, they could sense space, but feeling it did not mean that they understood it or recognized it. Gradually, the space around Yi Xian began to fluctuate. At this moment, space was no longer illusory but could be seen with the naked eye. With the help of the Space Dao Law, Yi Xian began to change the space around him. Soon, the space around him became distorted, and he himself also began to distort. However, Yi Xian stopped very soon because he had felt a sharp pain. Not daring to experiment on himself, Yi Xian began to change the space in front of him. Gradually, the river in front of him began to distort. A few days later, the Devil Sect suddenly announced that they were leaving Qingzhou. On the Qing State path, the Devil Sect leader Ku Mingshu's cloud ship suddenly stopped, and an old man silently appeared in front of Ku Mingshu. The person who had arrived was precisely Mo Xiu. Ku Mingshu smiled and said, "Elder Mo." Mo Xiu glanced at Ku Mingshu and said calmly, "Sect leader Ku, why did you suddenly announce that we're leaving the Azure State?" Ku Mingshu smiled and said, "Nothing, I just feel that it's time to go back." Mo Xiu's eyes narrowed. "Is that true?" Ku Mingshu nodded, "Of course." Mo Xiu stared at Ku Mingshu for a long time. In the end, he shook his head and sighed, "Sect leader Ku, the old man once promised you that once you get your hands on the Origin Heart, Qingzhou will belong to your Devil Sect. If you leave now, all your previous efforts will go to waste." Ku Mingshu laughed and said, "The Devil faction is not greedy. The Azure Prefecture is too big for us to swallow." Mo Xiu said in a low voice, "Brother Ku, tell me honestly, did someone say something to you? Or is someone threatening you?" Ku Mingshu shook his head and smiled, "Brother Mo, you're overthinking it." Mo Xiu nodded lightly. "Since it's like that, then the old man won't say anything further. Brother Ku, take care." Ku Mingshu cupped his fists and said, "Farewell." Just like that, the Devil Sect left the Azure Prefecture. In midair, Mo Xiu stared fixedly at the Devil Sect's army that had vanished into the distance, and his expression was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, an old man appeared by Mo Xiu's side and he said in a low voice, "There's something strange about this." Mo Xiu's expression was gloomy. "I presume that the Pale Sword Sect did something to make the Devil Sect decide to leave the Azure Prefecture." The old man asked, "What should we do now?" Mo Xiu fell silent for a moment and then he said, "Send the World Protectors into the Azure Prefecture, and we'll deal with the rest ourselves. Besides that, the Exalt Lord has given the order that the Origin Heart will appear in a few days, and the Pale Sword Sect might make a huge move. During this period of time, transfer all the true Imperial Law Realm experts back and ask them to swiftly rush to the Azure Prefecture." The old man said in a low voice, "Is this a decisive battle?" Mo Xiu's voice was fierce. "If the Pale Sword Sect dares to stop us from obtaining the Origin Heart, then we will fight to the death." With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In a certain small city, a middle-aged man walked into a tavern. It was drizzling outside the tavern. The middle-aged man sat down in front of an old man who bowed slightly. "Senior brother." These two people were Zhang Xian and Qin Beihan. Qin Beihan nodded. "Has the Realm Protector Alliance made any moves?" Zhang Xian nodded. "I just received news that they have already begun to mobilize all the true Imperial Law Realm experts. It seems that they want to transfer these people to the Azure Prefecture. It seems that the Origin Heart is about to appear." Qin Beihan lifted the cup in front of him and took a small sip, before he smiled and said, "It seems that the Realm Protector Alliance is determined to obtain the Azure Prefecture Origin Heart. Song Xian said in a low voice, "What do they want the origin heart for? I really can't figure it out." Qin Beihan said with smile, "This origin heart has a lot of uses. However, they should have another goal, but I don't know what it is. In addition, if I'm not wrong, they should also want the divine central continent's origin heart." Song Xian's expression changed slightly. If they want the divine central continent's origin heart, will the celestial sect of wonders and the aristocratic families of the upper world agree? Qin Beihan shook his head and smiled. "You are still so naive. Think about it, if the Realm Protector Alliance manages to deal with these forces, then who in the divine central continent can stop them? As long as the Realm Protector Alliance is willing to pay the price, they can be dealt with." Song Xian's expression darkened. As Qin Beihan said, as long as the celestial sect of wonders, the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, and the aristocratic families of the upper world do not object, no one in the divine central continent can resist the Realm Protector Alliance. Song Xian asked again, "What should we do now?" Qin Beihan said softly, "Tell them to get ready. Once the origin heart appears, even if we can't snatch it, we must destroy it. We must not let it fall into the hands of the Realm Protector Alliance." Song Xian nodded slightly. As if thinking of something, he hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Senior brother, there is something I don't know if I should ask." Qin Beihan smiled. "Then don't ask." Song Xian said in a low voice, "I still have to ask. Otherwise I won't feel comfortable. Senior brother, if I'm not wrong, when Yi Xian entered my Blue Sword sect, you should have already discovered his true identity, but you did not expose him. Moreover, you protected him with the power of the entire sect and made an enemy of the Realm Protector Alliance." At this point he glanced at Qin Beihan and did not say anything else. Qin Beihan smiled. "You want to say that I have another purpose?" Song Xian nodded. Qin Beihan said softly, "I have a purpose." Song Xian looked at Qin Beihan. Qin Beihan smiled. "First, we will eventually fight the Realm Protector Alliance. It is unavoidable. You should know very well how Master died." "Master." Hearing this, Song Xian's expression suddenly darkened. Because the Master of the Seven Sword Immortals had been ambushed and killed by the Realm Protector Alliance. However, the Realm Protector Alliance had never admitted to it. But everyone knew that it was done by the Realm Protector Alliance. Qin Beihan said softly, "Back then, eldest senior brother wanted to lead the entire sect to fight the Realm Protector Alliance, but I stopped him." At this point he shook his head and smiled. "Because of this, eldest senior brother still can't get over it. And little junior sister, after that, she no longer interfered in any matters of the sect. She locked herself in the Cloudy Sword Hall every day, and junior sister Gu, she has been guarding Master's body until now." Song Xian sighed. "To tell you the truth, I also blamed you back then. But I have thought it through these years. Back then we were just sword emperors. If we had followed eldest senior brother, our Blue Sword sect would have been annihilated." Qin Beihan shook his head slightly. "In fact, how could I not hate myself? Master adopted us all, especially me. I still remember back then I was just a beggar on the side of the road. It was Master who brought me back to Blue Sword sect, let me practice the sword, let me eat my fill and wear my clothes, and when Master died I was powerless. The feeling." As he spoke, he raised the cup in front of him and drained it in one gulp. Song Xian also raised his cup and drained it in one gulp. His eyes had already turned icy cold. After a moment, Qin Beihan shook his head and smiled. "No matter what, it's time to put an end to all the grudges of the past." At this point he looked at Song Xian and smiled. "I haven't answered your question. The reason why I accepted Yi Xian was indeed a little selfish. He is quite mysterious, especially the mysterious woman behind him. He is definitely not an ordinary person." "Great Sword Immortal?" Song Xian asked. Qin Beihan shook his head. "If it was just a Great Sword Immortal, the Realm Protector Alliance would not be so afraid. It should be someone who surpasses the Great Sword Immortal." Hearing this, Song Xian's expression suddenly turned solemn. Surpassing the Great Sword Immortal. This kind of person was rare in the Blue Firmament world. There were very few of them in history. Qin Beihan continued, "My selfish motive is that since his enemy is also the Realm Protector Alliance, we should form an alliance with him and hope that the mysterious woman behind him will act. However, after interacting with him, I found that he has a good temperament and values relationships. He is also a good seedling. So, I sincerely hope that he will sincerely join my Blue Sword sect." Song Xian nodded. "He is indeed a good person, but he is a little hot-tempered and can't stand being bullied." Qin Beihan laughed heartily. "If our founder could stand being bullied, he would not have killed the Realm Protector Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu. If he did not use that sword, our Blue Sword sect and the Realm Protector Alliance would not be at each other's throats today. However, if he did not use that sword, our Blue Sword sect would have to lower our heads for the rest of our lives. Song Xian shook his head and smiled. That's true. Who cares if he is hot-tempered or not, as long as he has the ability? Qin Beihan nodded slightly. If the Origin Heart appears, tell that kid not to participate in this matter. It's best to have him hide. If we win, it's naturally good, but if we lose, we have to leave some incense for the Pale Sword sect. As they spoke, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then they picked up their wine glasses and drained it in one gulp. P.S. How many readers came from Mighty Heavenly Sword Domain? Or could it be that most of the readers were new readers? Chapter 312. Beside the stream, Yi Xian was still sitting quietly. He had been sitting here for 3 days and 3 nights. There were no shortcuts on the path of cultivation. Even if there were, one could not be taken. This was one of Yi Xian's realizations. Because at this moment he realized that his Dharma defensive realm was actually not very powerful. Without the Space Dao Law, strictly speaking, he could not be considered a Dharma defensive realm. The Space Dao Law could be used as a reference, but it could not be relied on. 3 days later, Yi Xian no longer used the Space Dao Law, but relied on his own ability to comprehend space. And after a few days, Yi Xian could already change space without the Space Dao Law, but he still could not disintegrate space. To reach the true Dharma defensive realm, he must disintegrate space, in other words, control space. While Yi Xian was cultivating, he did not notice that Xiao Linger was currently climbing to the top of the prison pagoda. It was not that she did not want to fly, but that she could not fly. Or rather, it was very strenuous for her to fly. Who knew what she was going to do up there? After an unknown period of time, Xiao Linger finally climbed to the top. At the top, there were 3 swords stuck in the ground. The 3 swords were inserted quietly at the top of the pagoda, as if they were suppressing something. Xiao Linger climbed to the front of the 3 swords and glanced at them. Finally, her gaze fell on the sword in the middle. When she saw this sword, Xiao Linger's eyes lit up, because there was a stick of candied hawthorn hanging on the hilt of this sword. Xiao Linger took the candied hawthorn off, peeled off the parchment and licked it. In an instant, her whole body quivered. So sour. Xiao Linger blinked, her expression a little interesting. After a moment, she licked it again and her head trembled. Although it was sour, it seemed delicious. Just like that, Xiao Linger sat at the top of the tower, leisurely licking her sugar-coated haws. After a while, she suddenly looked at the bottom of the sword in the middle. There was a small box placed there. The box was very, very small, only the size of a palm. If one did not look carefully, they would not have noticed it. Xiao Linger climbed up to the box. There was a small piece of white paper on the box. There were only 2 small words on it. Strictly speaking, they were not words at all. They were twisted and crooked. These 2 small words were, white. Stay. Xiao Linger did not recognize these 2 words at all. She gently opened the small box and no one knew what she saw. Xiao Linger clapped her hands excitedly at the top of the tower. Not long after the Devil sect left, the Blood sect also left Qing province. As soon as the 2 sects left, some of the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent noticed that something was amiss. Thus they too left or went into hiding. However, Qingzhou did not calm down. On the contrary, it was still as chaotic as ever. This time it was the native cultivators of Qingzhou who were in chaos. Everyone knew that there was no order in Qingzhou at the moment. No one cared about anything. Under such circumstances, many people began to act recklessly. Most of the time, it was their own people who caused the most trouble. A few days later, a group of mysterious experts suddenly appeared in the lands of Qingzhou. Then more than a dozen cities were suddenly massacred. Not only that, but cultivators in many places also died tragically for no reason. At this moment, the entire Qingzhou was in a state of panic. As for the desolate mountain range, the entire mountain range suddenly began to crumble layer by layer. Not only that, but a faint red appeared on the ground. 30 people gathered in the sky above the desolate mountain range, and their leader was none other than High Lord Lu. Beside High Lord Lu was Emotio. And the people behind them were all true defensive Dharma realm experts. High Lord Lu looked down. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. Fong. Has everything been set up? Emotio nodded slightly. Yes. As soon as the Origin Heart appears, it will not be able to escape. High Lord Lu looked around. What's the Blue Sword sect's movement? Emotio said in a low voice. I've received news that Blue Mountain's 7 sword immortals have left Qingzhou. At this time I estimate they are already in Qingzhou. It seems they are prepared to fight to the death with us. High Lord Lu lightly said, no matter. This Blue Sword sect has indeed let them live comfortably for too long. Emoshio nodded. Not only did Blue Sword sect want revenge on the Realm Protection Alliance, but the Realm Protection Alliance also wanted revenge on Blue Sword sect. One had to know that the corpse of a High Lord from the Realm Protection Alliance was still hanging at the foot of Blue Mountain. At this time High Lord Lu said, no matter what, this origin heart is of great use to His Excellency. There must be no mistakes. Emoshio nodded. Understood. I'll go arrange it. Finished speaking, he turned around and left. In the sky, High Lord Lu slowly closed his eyes. In fact, he wasn't worried about Blue Sword sect because he knew Blue Sword sect inside out. What he was truly worried about was the mysterious woman behind Yi Xian. That woman was too terrifying. Even thinking about it, he still felt a lingering fear. A moment later, High Lord Lu suddenly opened his eyes. Send someone to investigate Yi Xian's whereabouts. A powerhouse immediately turned around and left. Somewhere in the mountain range, Yi Xian was still sitting quietly next to a small stream. He had been sitting here for quite some time. Nighttime. In the sky, stars filled the sky and a bright moon hung high in the sky. The earth was silent. In Yi Xian's ears, there was only the sound of the flowing river. In the middle of the night, Yi Xian's right hand slowly lifted up. In an instant, the space around his raised hand actually began to distort. Yi Xian's right palm opened and the space immediately returned to normal. At this time, his right hand lightly pressed down on the river in front of him. In an instant, the river in front of his palm actually disappeared. Space decomposition. By the river, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Right now, he had not reached the true defense realm, but he already had the power of the true defense realm. The reason why he had not reached the true defense realm was because he did not have a heaven-class sword to devour. Realms did not rely solely on enlightenment. Every advancement required various aspects. Moreover, the true defense realm did not only involve space decomposition. One's soul, mental strength, physical body, and all other aspects had to reach a certain level to be called the true defense realm. However, right now he only lacked swords. As long as he had enough swords, he could step into the true defense realm at any time. Yi Xian did not leave. He was still sitting by the river. At this moment he suddenly thought of Yu Qi's words. What was a sword celestial? The so-called sword celestial referred to having one's own Tao of the sword. And what was his Tao of the sword? He had thought about this question before, but he did not think it through thoroughly. Sword. Why did he want to learn the sword? In the beginning, his motive for learning the sword was very simple. He just wanted to become stronger and he felt that swordsman was very cool. But now he realized that the path of the sword Tao was much more complicated than he had imagined. Especially when he was comprehending in the sword tomb of the Pale Sword sect, he understood that the Tao of the sword actually contained too much. Moreover, everyone's Tao of the sword had its own uniqueness. Then what was his Tao of the sword? At this thought, Yi Xian gradually became dazed. His sword intent was the good and evil sword intent. As for good and evil, he actually did not understand it very well. This was because the matters of the world were too complicated. Many times, good was not necessarily evil and evil was not necessarily good. Good person? Bad person? If this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Looking at it from different angles might result in different results. But what about the Tao of the sword? What was his Tao of the sword? Yi Xian asked himself again. There was no answer. Not only was there no answer, but it was also a little chaotic. Just like that, Yi Xian sat in silence for an entire night. At daybreak, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something and he took out a wooden figure. This wooden figure was none other than Yi Ling. Looking at the wooden figure, Yi Xian's lips curled into a smile. Soon, a memory of the past surfaced in his mind. It was something that happened many years ago. He carried his younger sister on his back and went shopping. At that time, his younger sister had 2 pigtails and wore a floral dress. At that time he was already the heir of the Yi family, so he did not have to live a hard life. Yi Xian carried Yi Ling to a noodle shop. The 2 siblings sat down and Yi Ling looked at him with a bright smile. Soon 2 bowls of steaming hot noodles were served. The siblings each had a fried egg in their bowl. Yi Ling picked up the noodles and started eating, while Yi Xian looked at her quietly. His face was also full of smiles. Very satisfied. Very happy. Because he could give his younger sister nice clothes and good food. Moreover, no one in the Yi family dared to bully his younger sister anymore. After a while, Yi Ling picked up the bowl and drank the soup. As if thinking of something, she looked at Yi Xian and grinned. "Brother, why aren't you eating?" Yi Xian smiled. "Are you happy?" Yi Ling hurriedly went to his side and hugged him tightly. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly gasped. Yi Ling quickly asked, "What's wrong, brother?" Yi Xian smiled. "I'm fine." Yi Ling nodded and then leaned her head on Yi Xian's shoulder. She did not notice that there was blood slowly dripping from Yi Ling's back. As the heir of the Yi family, in order to fight for the interests of the family, he had to fight with the other families almost every day. Getting injured was a common occurrence. However, he was very satisfied, because he could change his younger sister's fate through his own efforts. Until now, he could not forget the life he and his younger sister had led when that woman left. At that time, his younger sister could not even afford a bowl of noodles. Not to mention a bowl of noodles, the siblings almost starved to death several times. The saddest thing for a man was to not have the ability to protect the people around him. At that time he was still young. In the face of this sudden change, he was at a loss and did not know what to do. In fact, the one who was the most afraid at that time was not Yi Ling, but him. Because looking at his younger sister, he did not know what to do in the future. At that time, it was the time of his life that he was the most afraid, confused, and fearful. Under the sunset, Yi Xian suddenly pulled Yi Ling out of the noodle house. Yi Ling tightly held onto Yi Xian's hand and the siblings slowly walked into the distance. On the way. "Brother, can we eat noodles every day in the future?" "Yes." "Really? Really?" "Brother promises you." "Well, then I want to add more eggs, one at a time." "No problem." "Hee, brother is the best. By the way, brother, do you know what my biggest wish is?" "What is it?" "Hee, I want to open a noodle house in the future. I will make noodles for you every day." End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.